to talk with civil rights attorney Lee Merritt, Esquire, who is founder of the Merritt Law Firm. He was scheduled to join us at this 10 o'clock hour, so we're still waiting on him. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866 361 0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866 361 0900. If you have not heard already, you should know that masks are mandatory in all public spaces in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so that was announced recently as part of an order, that an edict from Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf. He announced that order that has been signed by Pennsylvania Secretary of Health, Dr. Rachel Levine, and basically Governor Wolf, along with Dr. Rachel Levine, have authority under the Disease Prevention and Control Act to institute mandatory mask wearing in all public spaces throughout the state of Pennsylvania. That order is in effect. It is in effect immediately. Please follow it. There is nothing that is egregious about it. There is nothing that is over the top or extra about it. There's nothing police state or totalitarian about it. It is looking out for your health and the health of your fellow neighbors and also fellow family members and friends as well. Wear those masks. We have conclusive science that shows that masks are indeed effective. That's why, we've been having this conversation for the past couple of weeks, because I think it's a valid question. It was a valid question when it came up. If people were so mad about reopen protesters going to state capitals and trying to force governors' hands into reopening the economies of different states, but people were so mad about that, and even I ranted on about that, about how like reopen protesters were basically like bioterrorists. They're like spreading the coronavirus by constantly doing that. And we actually had instances of that. We still have instances of that happening, where like the actual leaders of those protests have ended up becoming infected, or we find out that there are spikes of infections after those particular events. We have not seen spikes of infection. And so, people were, well, let me make this real quick point. People were saying, okay, if we get mad at them, why are we not getting mad at George Floyd, Black Lives Matter protesters who were converging on urban centers and different cities and suburban townships, et cetera? They're outside, they're protesting too, and they're doing that in crowds. Why isn't that a problem? But the big difference here is that one thing you do constantly see with folks that are protesting around Black Lives Matter and Black civil rights, Black human rights, around issues like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, is people are wearing their mask. So I gotta give that. People are wearing their mask, and so we have not seen spikes, and public health officials and various epidemiologists have been looking into this. We have not seen spikes from those protests. We do see spikes from reopen protests or open the economy protests because people are not wearing their mask. It's that simple. So you have to wear a mask. The Pennsylvania governor is well within the law and well within his rights as governor to mandate this, and this is a very necessary move, and it's a move that is built, that is designed for the common good, particularly as we are seeing in half of U.S. states, coronavirus is increasing. In fact, the coronavirus case surge is as bad now as it was at the beginning of the pandemic, or when we were in the throes of the pandemic and we were all in lockdown. But people are just not listening. There are a lot of people out there not listening. I'm not saying that this is all of you, but people are just in a variety of ways just ignoring very simple advice. Wear a mask. Get a mask. Masks now, to my understanding, are very plentiful and very available. If you do, and feel free to call in too and let us know if you are having trouble acquiring a mask. I definitely would tell you, particularly listeners, go to sources like healthcareready.org, and they come on here every week, and they will be able to find for you or locate for you places where you can get free masks or free repositories of masks. If because I know not everyone can find a mask. I know not everyone can afford masks, because Like sometimes masks can get fairly expensive, particularly depending on the type of design you want to get, but or the type of mask that you want to get. If you don't want to get just those traditional surgical masks that we see a lot of people running around with, and there's some people making their own masks, but bottom line is wear your mask, and also tell your young people in your household, particularly teenagers and young adults, wear their mask. And it's fine, people want to go out, but exercise an abundant amount of caution and be respectful of other people's spaces and maintain social distance, physical distancing, as much as you possibly can. And so it's just really selfish. It's just really selfish. It's rude. It is very non-neighborly and non-community. Particularly if there are those of you out there who talk a really big game when it comes to community stuff, but don't want to wear a mask or don't wear a mask correctly. It's just one of the most, at this time, it is perhaps the most selfish thing you can do is to just be going into public spaces and not wearing your mask. I can't stress this anymore, particularly since we are now showing, I mean, this is just low hanging fruit. Once again, it's like one of these low hanging fruit, simple things that we can do to alleviate, to start reducing the impact of or eliminating this crisis. Start kind of turning, making a pivot and turning the corner. It's just simply wearing a mask. It's as simple as that. And people are going into all these different diatribes and rants about like their own individual liberties. I'm not saying you, WURD, reality check listening audience, but maybe there's a few of you out there who, think that that is cute, and people are, giving these like, having these, sort of cute tantrums in public. And I've been witness to that, in terms of not wearing masks and thinking that they're different. It is a public health risk. You are risking other people and you are risking yourself. It is just as important for you, since you're selfish and you're not wearing a mask. For those of you listening who are not wearing a mask, well, it's for you. Like, so since you're so selfish, you don't want to wear a mask. Okay, well, we're trying to look out for you. The governor is mandating this to look out for you as well. 215-634-8064. I'm not sure where Lee Merritt is. So we had Lee Merritt scheduled, and we don't have Lee Merritt. So we must have ran into some sort of scheduling mishap or glitch. We were supposed to talk with Lee Merritt. We were going to talk about the upcoming or the now instituted grassroots law project that he has put together, and that's being done in conjunction with district attorneys, prosecutors, and cities, including San Francisco, Boston, and Philadelphia. So this grassroots law project has announced the formation of local truth, justice, and reconciliation commission. So we had some questions for Lee Merritt about that today, but I'm not sure we got him. So, I mean, so I get it. We're not CNN, we're not MSNBC, so people sometimes just like are a bit more like flexible with our time, so sometimes it's just like, oh, it's just that local radio station in Philly. Okay, all right, whatever. We may not have Lee Merritt. But we'll get him at some point. 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open right now. So feel free to chime in with that and tell us about. Also, would like to get your thoughts on the mandatory mask wearing that has been instituted in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is not the only place where that's been instituted, and it's not. It's something that should be a national edict. We should have like a national understanding or national guidance from federal government officials about it. But obviously, this is a state-by-state thing. So how intense or how pervasive coronavirus is depends on your zip code and depends on where you live. And if you have friends and family who live especially in the South and certain parts of the West or Southwest, you are very worried. You are very worried. And, you're just worried about, kind of like they're not just their state of mind, their state of health as well. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Philly area, we have, as of yesterday, 202 homicides. We have crossed the 200 homicide mark Rubicon. Philadelphia has 202 homicides as of July 1st. And homicides are 23% more than where they were this time last year. So this time last year, we had 164 homicides. And as we head into a hot summer, we have 202 homicides. We are over 200 homicides already in the city of Philadelphia. The last time where we were over 200 homicides at this time was 2007. 2007. So 13 years ago was the last time in Philadelphia where we were above 200 homicides at this point in the year. So we are well on our way if things keep up, and the city's not really responding to this adequately. We are well on our way to surpassing the record that was already set last year in the city of Philadelphia of 356 homicides. That's kind of where we are at this point. Total violent crime, at least when you look at the weekly reports, because you have to look a little bit deeper, and you can't just talk about homicides. You also have to talk about just people who've been getting injured by violent crimes. That's important, and it's most of the time it's guns, but obviously it's other forms of violence that's also injuring people and hurting people. Over the last 28-day period, we did see a decrease, but it's still higher. The last 28-day period, we've seen a 4% increase in aggravated assaults by gun in the city of Philadelphia, at least according to the Philadelphia Police Department. At one point, it was much, much higher than that. Remember, we were talking about that last month. So it's been sort of a slowdown, at least in terms of 28-day periods, but it's still higher. It's still an increase. There hasn't been any slowdown. Aggravated assault by other means have been up by 8.5% over the last 28 days. Total violent crime over the last 28 days has increased by nearly 7%. That's kind of where things are right now. There has been a very tremendous increase, a very worrisome increase. One thing that we don't talk about enough, particularly in the city of Philadelphia, but I'm noticing this in this latest Philadelphia Police Department weekly report, there has been a dramatic increase in rape. There's been a dramatic increase in rape and sexual assault in the city of Philadelphia, nearly 50%, a nearly 50% increase in rape over the last 28-day period. That's concerning, and that's something that we should pay more careful and close attention to. And I'm just looking at that. I'm really worried about that. So, and we all should be worried about that. Please watch over your daughters, especially. Like, see, people see numbers like this. Philly's got to get its act together. People, especially in other places, see numbers like this, or they hear me in other places talk about numbers like this, and Philly becomes a very undesirable place to live. Where you have, over the past 28 days, a 50% increase in rape. Philly, you guys have got to get it together. It really has a lot of work to do. Let me go to Reverend Floyd out of Northeast, who's calling in for a reality check. Reverend Floyd?
Oh, hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning. How are you doing? All right.
All right. I'm so happy that we're having this conversation about crime. I'm even more happy that we come together and understand the nexus between the levels of crime in Philadelphia and major cities and economic empowerment of our people. I believe with this momentum that has happened with the young folks, they're doing a tremendous job with the momentum. Black Lives Matter. We use this momentum to catalyze a strong pressure against commercial banks as it relates to CRA, Community Reinvestment Act. The violation, none of the banks, none of the major banks has ever been in compliance of Community Reinvestment Act. Many people think of of Community Reinvestment Act in reference to stopping redlining, but it's also the percentages of their reserves the bank reserves must go to funding black-owned businesses, and they have never been in compliance to that. So,
yeah, when you say, and thank you for raising that too, Reverend Floyd, and we'll talk about that some more at some point. But when you say Community Reinvestment Act, I just want to be, sort of aware of listeners out there who might not understand what that is. And in your mind, what is that? Like, how would you define that or explain that?
Sure. The Community Reinvestment Act was a federal act, a law that was enacted about 25, 28 years ago to mitigate or reverse the horrible practices of redlining, whereby those that are in specific areas, delineated areas that are with a high concentration of minorities, particularly blacks, they would not give home mortgages.
Yes. I think it was more than 40 years ago. I think it was like 1977. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. This one, I'm just finding that out. Yeah, but you're right.
Senator Foxmeyer. That's right. That's correct. And then, but on the other side of the CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, was a strong compliance model that said that we want the financial institutions, that their reserves, their funds, percentage of their funds must go to minority black-owned businesses, and the commercial banks and pretty much almost all levels of financial institutions, the credit unions, the savings and loans, the community banks, as well as the commercial banks, have never been in compliance with that. Yeah.
Hey, Reverend Floyd, I actually have to go to break, but this is good. This is something that we need to revisit. And I'm sorry, we do have to break, and we got another guest coming up. But thanks for raising that, because there's a lot of discussion around the Community Reinvestment Act, and we want to revisit that too. I got to let you go so we can go to break here. We have to bring on our next guest, Harvey. I'm not sure, we weren't able to locate Lee Merritt, but we are going to be bringing on Harvey Rice, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, going to be talking about tax revenues in Pennsylvania, particularly in places like Philly, what that situation looks like. And let's have a conversation too about tax increases, particularly in this time of pandemic. Here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Weather and traffic to keep you informed for your drive home in the happy hour with Sincerely Sarita, Monday through Thursday, 4 till 7 p.m. right here on Word Radio 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Word Radio 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute? When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can. But it's just as important to take time for yourself. AARP can help. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. It is the Thursday edition. We're waiting on Harvey Rice, Executive Director, Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, PICA. PICA is the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority. So he's supposed to be joining us very shortly to talk about tax revenues in the city of Philadelphia, what that looks like. Also want to get a sense of trends as far as how cities and states are handling dropping or reduced tax revenue intake, how these are very difficult times for cities and states across the board. So maybe we can get a sense from Mr. Rice about that. We did have Harvey Rice. He was on the phone, so suddenly there was I guess a technical glitch when it went dead. So we're going to get him back just very shortly. Harvey Rice is going to be joining us very quickly in short order to talk about tax revenue, the tax revenue situation in PA, Philly, and also get a sense of kind of what's happening, what's affecting other cities and states as well, and how they're handling that, how they're managing that, if that's something that they're managing well at all. But it is a very grave situation. There is discussion. There is a push for a second, what they're calling a second stimulus package or a second wave of federal aid. And there's been a lot of discussion, a lot more earnest discussion about within that debate about providing billions more dollars in assistance and aid for cities and states so they can close budget gaps that were not anticipated before pandemic. Okay, we have Harvey Rice on. Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority is found at PICA, PICAPA.org, PICAPA.org, and its executive director is on with us now. Harvey, how are you doing, sir?
Good morning. Thank you for having me on your call-in show.
All right. No, thank you. I appreciate your time here. So explain to listeners what exactly is the PICA. What do you all do? What do you all focus on?
It's the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, which was founded in 91-92 as a result of, at that time, the city was running budget deficits, and they were thinking of filing for bankruptcy. So the state stepped in, and because their bond rating was so much better than the cities at the time, the cities was almost a junk bond status.
I remember that.
So they floated bonds so that they can get them out of their deficit, and as a result, they created this financial oversight authority, which is PICA, and as part of that, as long as the bonds are being paid off, and they're supposed to be ended in 2023, that'll be our last payment. We oversee the budget of the city of Philadelphia and their 5-year plan. They have to submit to us a 5-year plan. We review and analyze it, and the board considers it and either votes to accept the plan or reject the plan, and among other things. But that's our main role.
What sort of I'm real curious here. What sort of differentiates you from a function like the city controller's office, or do you do you work in close partnership with? Because the controller's office, right, is sort of like a financial fiscal oversight entity or agency.
Yes.
And so what sort of differentiates what you do from that?
Well, I think two things differentiate us. One is we don't do as one of the sole main functions of the city controller is they have the audit function. They can go in and audit, and we can do that, but we have to work more in cooperation with the city. We recently did an audit on police court overtime, a performance audit. We hired an outside vendor. But I think the main difference is that they have to submit to PICA a 5-year plan, where they don't submit that to the city controller's office. However, when they submit it to us, the city controller does look at the plan, and she gives us a report of what she thinks where the plan is and whether we should accept or reject it. But that's our main function, and it's probably the main difference is that if we reject the plan, then state funding could stop to the city of Philadelphia, with exceptions. There's very many exceptions in some areas where it wouldn't stop, such as DHS. But so that, and the controller does not have that function.
Got it. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting to know as well. You all have been PICA. Obviously, this has been a very interesting, level, fascinating but troubling time, particularly as you're watching city finances very closely. And what's your take on that? Like, how severe, how bad is the tax revenue drop for the city of Philadelphia? You all have assessed this recently. You just talked about it, just announced it. Explain that situation to us.
Well, we monitor on a monthly basis the city's tax revenues. And up to March, they were doing very well. They were coming in higher than projected. And then April and May kicked in. And then that's where we started seeing the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so as of May, we saw first time since the 08-09 recession, the first time where we saw decreases in every major tax collected by the city. And so what we saw was that we saw a decrease in May of about $90 million in projected tax revenues, and year to date we saw almost about $270 million less than, and they're projecting that it's going to be taking in June. We project that the impact for revenues for May, June, and April, May, and June would be about $400 million.
Wow. So that's a big chunk, $500 million out of a $5 billion, close to basically a $5 billion budget for the city.
Exactly. And they're projecting for the fiscal year where we just came in, FY21, which started July 1st, they're projecting about a $749 million hole in revenues. That's over the whole year.
Are those projections? What's the formula for them? Are you projecting conservatively, or are you projecting sort of high? So you're hoping that maybe it comes back, being a lot, the revenue intake becomes a lot higher than even you anticipated or projected.
All right. How the process works is that the city, when they sent us the plan and we received it Monday, they project what revenues they're going to collect in every tax category, and then part of our job is, and in the review and analysis part of it is, we look at their revenue projections for the next fiscal year as well as every year of the fiscal plan of the 5-year plan, and we have an economist to assist us, and we go through and we evaluate the projections, see if they're reasonable and appropriate. So then we can then look at the expenditure side of the plan to make sure that the budget and the plan is balanced. So we're going through that process now and working with our economists and looking at those projections. I don't know whether they're high or they're conservative or not. We won't know that until we get through the process.
Right. We're talking, if you're just now tuning in, having a conversation with Harvey Rice, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, PICA. Thanks for correcting me on that. PICA.org for more information on what they do, and at PICA_authority on social media, on Twitter more specifically, where we are, to engage them there to find out what their latest research is up to. You also want to go to PICAPA.org to look at their latest briefing on the state of city finances, or the state, more specifically, of city tax revenues. Is there something, I know you were saying that this is the first time since the recession where we've seen such significant drops. Is there anything that's, however, different about this that worries you, Harvey, that, I don't know, maybe keeps you up at night, keeps the other economists or other folks maybe on the PICA board up at night, something that's scary about this or more unpredictable than recession, because of just the very shadowy very insidious nature of the coronavirus. Are there elements of this that worry you in terms of the city's like long-term financial outlook?
Well, I'll give you a specific one and then an overall one. Specifically, what worries me is the business and income receipts tax, because that's a volatile tax to predict and to project, because businesses, when you file for your tax, you file for, like, if I'm going to file in 20, I'm filing for my tax in 19, plus I'm filing for what I expect to recoup in 20. So then so people need to do that. They extended the deadline till July 15th. So we don't know what the impact of the COVID pandemic will have on the business and receipts, the BERT tax. And then next year, if people have lost money, then they're going to file for refunds for that year that they've already prepaid. So then that could affect what we're collecting next year. So that is, and it's always a volatile tax. It's always to project because of the way it's collected. But now it's really worrisome to us because it is, it's significant revenue stream for the city of Philadelphia. And I think then overall is how will the business and the social climate change as a result of this pandemic? Will more people be working at home, especially if they live outside the city? How that will impact the non-resident wage tax, and will office space become more empty? And what will that do? And then all the surrounding businesses that rely on people coming in the center city and working during the day, the lunch places, the restaurants, the stores, and the shops. So that's, and how life will be once we get through this pandemic. Will it change, and how will it change, and how will it affect life in the city of Philadelphia, and more specifically, the revenues that Philadelphia needs to provide the services, especially being a city with the highest poverty rate of the major cities, the services that need for the most vulnerable residents of the city, so that we can keep on continuing the funding to education and the funding to people for rental assistance and for DHS services and those services that really a significant portion of the population of Philadelphia rely on.
Yeah. So what's your sort of take on how the city right now so far, because it had to revise its budget, right? Its fiscal year 2021 budget. What's your take on how they've managed that or handled it so far?
I think both City Council and the administration working together, I think they did the best they could in this time. They're continuing their core mission of funding the school district and education, pre-K, and the rental assistance and the scholarships for people going to community college, and money for transitional jobs, and so and then the other core city services, fire and streets and public safety. So I think while the amounts aren't what were in the plan that was put forward in March, the commitment to fund those, especially after we get through FY21, after next year, this fiscal year, to increase those programs. So the commitment's there to get us out of poverty, to get the city out of poverty by education, by jobs, by helping people keep their homes or keep their apartments.
Yeah. We've been talking with Harvey Rice, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, PICA, PICAPA.org for more information, and also to get the latest analysis from them on the city's tax revenues. Harvey, I'd like to bring you back. There's a lot of other questions I had too. So I'm hoping we can get you back real soon.
Absolutely.
A part 2 of the discussion. That would be great. Yeah, I really, and I'm putting that notice up, taking a note too for producer Troy Wilmore, see if we can schedule that up. But Harvey, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Check out the Source lineup on Word Radio. Mondays, get ready for the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith. On Tuesdays, it's Andrea Lawful Sanders. Then on Wednesdays, it's the Black Women's Leadership Council. On Thursdays, it's a second helping of Andrea Lawful Sanders. And on Fridays, it's Tiffany Bacon. Don't miss the Source. Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. and Fridays, 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. Exclusively on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app.
I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message. I'm asking for your support and to join our team. We need a leader to unite this country. We need a leader who will push an agenda to move everyone forward, to allow every American the opportunity to share in this country's prosperity. Someone who will lead, but also who will listen. Someone we can be proud of. I promise you this election isn't about me. It's about you, your family, your community, and our country. The moment has come for our nation to deal with systemic racism, to deal with the denial of the promise of this nation to so many. It's time to make healthcare a right, not a privilege. It's time to give every student the opportunity to get a good education, no matter what their zip code is. And it's time to give workers the pay and dignity they deserve. This is the United States of America, and there's nothing we cannot do if we do it together.
Paid for by Biden for president.
Be heard. Want another way to join the conversation? Follow us on social media using the hashtag onWURD. Be heard. Stay connected to Word Radio. Independent Black Media. Want the latest in Word swag? Check out the shop tab on wordradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on wordradio.com. Show the world that you're all about black. Talk media. Reality check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open at the moment. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. Bureau of Labor Statistics is saying at the top of the month that the unemployment rate in June was 11.1%. So apparently 4.8 million jobs, at least according to the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics, 4.8 million jobs in June added to the labor market, and that's just as of the top of this month of July, because we're seeing those previous months' jobs numbers that are coming out. So that's something that we'll be watching closely as well. So you have about, I think this was 2.7 million jobs were added in May. So more added in June than in May. But we still... I think we're still, let me see, because so many jobs were lost in March and April, we're still 14.7 million jobs below where we were in February before the pandemic spread and we went into lockdown phase. Let me go to Lynn out of Darby, who's calling in for Reality Check.
Good morning, Charles. How are you?
How are you doing, Ms. Lynn? All right.
I'm okay. I enjoyed your show with Miss Potter and her giving us other alternatives to get this nutball out of office. And I want to thank you so much for bringing up the point of the numbers of rape going up. My daughter's getting ready to get a little part-time job, and she got to take 2 buses. Can't tell me nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make sure that she's well-armed and to watch her back. I appreciate it. What I'm calling for today is our youth. our college students. I was so disappointed to hear on the news about how the college students, especially in the South, to be specific, Alabama, they were having Corona parties, taking bets on who would catch it next. And it just breaks my heart that they're not serious about this. And, you know, we're counting on them to be our future. And for this new change, we're counting on them. So I just want to tell WURD parents to talk to the youth, talk to the college-bound students, and tell them this is not a joke, that you shouldn't be having these parties, and it is more serious than they think, because, you know, it's down in the South, but that spreads. My friends, they just took a road trip down South. I don't know why. But, you know, that these numbers are going to spread. So that's why I'm So that's all I had to say. Thanks for letting me say that, Charles. And thanks for putting me on to the BE and the citizenship, too. I'm going to be checking that out. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you, Ms. Lynn, and thanks for talking about that. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a moment. Let me go to Jim out of West Philly real quick, who wants to chime in with a reality check. Mr. Jim, what's good?
Well, having a real reality check when you start talking about this increased violence and everything.
Yeah.
But you got to think back to when, even with the rape, they've said that rape is not as sexual as it is about exerting power, control over a person, taking their will away.
Yeah.
The same thing with a gun. Somebody feels like a power rush, like I can do this. I'm powerful. I'm this. I'm that, and whatever, right? And I guess from the frustration, all people just seek this, and until they stop the causes of this, it's because they're going to keep increasing and everything. It's like everybody went crazy a few weeks ago when they broke into all the stores and everything. That was just like, what kind of mentality is that? But everybody joined in because they felt like I'm in control. I can do this, or some kind of way that they're fighting back. And the problem is you're putting your frustration in the wrong direction to change anything that's around you.
Right.
And I regret the other day, I talked to a person that's like 30, 33, just had their birthday. They have no intention whatsoever of voting. Like, I'm not going to do it. How do you change a person's mindset like that when everything is controlled by the legislature, the people that you put in there in charge of? They have no fear that you can put them out. What are they going to do to your benefit? You have to learn how to play the game and manipulate the system with the most powerful thing you got. That vote is more powerful than any AK that you can muster, if you put it in unison for your benefit. And it just amazes me that people can't understand that simple fact. On an individual basis, you can do something. You don't need to go within yourself and do that. It doesn't cost you 5 cents to go and push the button and vote. If you don't know what to vote for, you know what you don't want, so you vote against it. All right? Because what you got sure ain't doing you no good. So protest that way. Protest in a way that means something. So that's basically what, my concept is. And if you talk to any elected officials, find out what's up with these stupid fireworks that they're selling on street corners and all. That ain't legal. And they explode all night long. I don't even know where they're getting the money to buy all this junk at. But it's not legal. Somebody's going to get hurt. Suppose somebody's just selling firecrackers and all these other fireworks, store them in their house. What kind of catastrophe could that be? And it's all illegal. Why isn't anybody enforcing it? I don't know.
Yeah. I hear you on that. Let me, Mr. Jim, thanks for calling in. I appreciate those. I'll talk about that in a moment. Let me go to Gary out of Chester. Just taking these phone calls while we have phone lines open. Mr. Gary, welcome to Reality Check.
Mr. Ellis, thank you for taking my call, sir. The question I wanted to ask you, what the possibility look like the Democrats taking some Senate seats?
Right now, it looks it's very competitive. It looks very competitive. There's a high probability you're having some states that never were considered lean Democrat, as they call it before, now leaning Democrat. Like, for example, you have two open Senate seats in Georgia. Georgia is always reliably red. Now it's leaning blue. So that Senate map looks extremely competitive for Democrats right now. But that's all contingent on, and going back to Mr. Jim's point, that's contingent on turnout. People have to turn out. People can't get complacent. I don't want to say it looks good. I'm never going to say it looks good until we're just over with this thing and we actually get it done. I don't want to say it looks good because I don't trust polling data. Remember, because everyone got duped into complacency back in 2016, and thinking that that we wouldn't be where we are now, and it happened. So everyone has to, there's a whole lot of things that are going to happen between now and October, November. There's a whole lot of voter suppression that's taking place now. But there are states that are competitive. Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona is competitive. I would also say Kentucky now, particularly with Amy McGrath, who's the Marine fighter pilot, who just eked out a victory in that Democratic primary. I mean, I don't get me wrong. It would have been nice to have seen the brother Charles Booker win. I just could not see Charles Booker beating Mitch McConnell. Democrats have a real good chance there of beating Mitch McConnell, like just beating him down and unseating him. And it has been done before to a Senate Majority Leader. So I think that that makes Kentucky competitive. And we did see black voters coming out strong during the primary in Kentucky and we saw that too in their gubernatorial race in Kentucky last year. There are untapped pockets of black voters in all these states. And Democrats have gotten, including Pennsylvania, and that's what's going to get Democrats over the hump, is tapping into black voters that they didn't identify before, and particularly in a state like Kentucky, pockets of places like Louisville, Jefferson County, and elsewhere.
Now, Mr. Ellis, why isn't the committee, the person head of the Democrat committee, why is he not aggressive?
Who?
The man who headed the Democrat Party. He's not aggressive enough to me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. Correct. Yeah, Tom Perez. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that assessment.
Thank you, sir.
He might. Yeah, I agree with that assessment. We've had him on here before. That's a critique that's quite talked about quite often with respect to Perez. Just don't feel he's aggressive enough. They don't feel like they feel like also sometimes a little bit too milquetoast, and not really really pressing the message, pressing a much more robust and muscular message for Democrats and getting people mobilized. Tom Perez is the head of the Democratic National Committee as well. Also to that point, Mr. Jim, about fireworks, definitely called. So the thing is that fireworks are illegal in Philadelphia, but they're being sold in Philadelphia, and this is where, once again, where city priorities don't match with or are in direct opposition to state priorities or state desires, and so fireworks, we do live in Pennsylvania is a very gun-friendly state, and so it's a fireworks-friendly state, and so it's one of these things where they're technically illegal in Philly, not illegal throughout the state, hence making them sold in Philly and the suburbs too. So really it's going to take some and I think that this is an important issue, and this is something that interestingly enough, and so they're on their summer recess. They call it a summer recess, and so it's like people think that city council is on a break, but it's like that's one of those quality of life issues, and it's also a dangerous issue. Fireworks are dangerous. And I just remember as a kid being involved in a situation where and trying to keep these other kids from hurting putting some cherry bombs, I think they were, in the back pocket of another kid, and got into a scuffle in the middle of the street, and they did it anyway, because I'm trying to protect the kid, and he got 3rd-degree burns. It's just fireworks are so dangerous, and police got called into the situation. So it's just it's up there. I mean, fireworks, or the use of fireworks, people using fireworks for pranks, people using fireworks for violence. So it's just that serious of an issue, and it's quite astounding that the city council, that the mayor have not elevated this into a crisis, because a lot more people are starting to talk about it. A lot more people are calling about it. and it was just something I'm trying to remember the exact sequence of events, but somehow the fireworks lobby was able to like slip that in, fireworks being sold in Philly, and now a number of fireworks being used quite frequently in Philly, and people are upset. Call your city council member, light up their phones. I mean, if I were city council, I was city council president, I'd be doing an emergency session just on that issue alone. In addition to you could have a whole emergency session on violence and then put fireworks under that umbrella. I mean, if I were city council president, but there are a lot of major issues like violence in the city. I mean, once again, it's optics, right? The city just crossed over the 200 homicide Rubicon, and then it just doesn't. I know I had this conversation with the city council president one time before last year, and he got irritated. I get it, because he's like, well, we call it a recess, but we're still busy. But that's not the way it looks to residents, and it's like, either you're going to meet resident demands, either you're going to I know state legislatures that are year round, folks who are getting paid less in state legislatures who do year round sessions, and they're in their state capitals getting paid less than the $130,000 that a Philadelphia city council person gets paid. And they're making sure that they're prioritizing important issues. We're headed into a hot summer. We're already over 200 homicides, and now people got to deal with fireworks. And fireworks can be just as violent as guns, as actual, like they can kill too, and they can hurt people. And I've seen that kind of hurt, that kind of pain take place like in front of my own eyes. It's not a good thing. So it is something where, you're going to have to call your city council people, call the city council president's office, ask them what's going on, what are they going to do about it, and also go to phila.gov and call the Office of Licensing and Inspection as well, and see what can be done about it. We'll try to follow that topic a little bit more closely as well, because it's not being talked about enough. But I'm also really concerned. We have seen over the past 2 weekly reports in the Philadelphia Police Department. I'm just responding to someone on Facebook Live who was a bit stunned when she heard this when I announced it just a little bit earlier on. Diane Fassett on Facebook Live, she was like, was this in the city of Philadelphia? Yes, it was in the city of Philadelphia. Over the past 2 weekly reports the Philadelphia Police Department has put out, there has been an increase in rape. There has been an increase in rape in the city of Philadelphia. I don't think that's something that people have noticed. I just took notice of it myself. There was a 50% increase in rape in the last weekly report over the last 28 days in the city of Philadelphia. Something's going on, and that's a startling figure. And, once again, one of those other many major dangerous things about the city of Philadelphia that city officials are, they want to give property tax abatements. They want to bring more people into the city, but they don't want to do what it takes to really dramatically, fundamentally change or change for the better the quality of life in the city, making the city truly a safer place to live. I know that's a very hard ask during pandemic, but you've got a real serious problem, Philly, if you've got a 50% spike in rapes over the past 28 days as of this weekly report of the Philadelphia Police Department. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back here on Reality Check.
Start your day with Daybreak. Hosted by Helana. Weekdays 6 a.m. till 7 a.m. Exclusively on Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live at wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app. Dietz & Watson has been making premium meats and artisan cheeses for over 80 years. And when it comes to stacking sandwiches and party platters, they've got something for everyone in the family, like maple honey turkey breast, American cheese, buffalo chicken, and more. So get to your local deli and taste 4 generations of family recipes. With Dietz & Watson on the table, you'll have everyone coming back for seconds and thirds. Dietz & Watson, it's a family thing since 1939.
Your child deserves to be educated in a safe learning environment. Southwest Leadership Academy Charter School is a tuition-free public school. Both our locations offer dual-gender environments with single-gender classrooms. Our students score in the top state testing percentile among area schools. Apply online at bit.ly/enrolls SLA in all caps. That's bit.ly/enroll SLA.
Oak Street Health knows their patients. Every day, health is the best way to improve their quality of life. That's why Oak Street's providers take the time to listen to each patient, understand their individual circumstances, and develop comprehensive care plans that address their needs. Oak Street Health offers a better way to care for seniors and help you understand insurance. Welcome visits are encouraged in Oak Street Transportation. Call Oak Street Health Parkside now, 215-392-0305.
Lifting every voice till earth and heaven ring. This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app as well. Phone lines are open, by the way. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. Bringing on Martin Pratt of Philly Your Black News. Go to @PHL Your Black News, @PHL Your BLK News on Twitter, on social media for more there. Martin Pratt joining us by Skype. What's happening, Martin?
Hey, good to be here. Shout out to the Word community.
Yeah, absolutely. No, good to have you on. Hey, talk about, because we saw the governor, Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf, he issued the mandatory mask order.
Right.
So that's in place. Where's the city right now as far as the pandemic is concerned? Because we've already crossed the 25,000 coronavirus case threshold in the city of Philadelphia. And I guess the green phase, a lot of that's been rolled back. People are being a lot more cautious because we're seeing an overall nationwide spike in coronavirus cases. What's the city talking about right now with respect to the pandemic?
I think it's hard to say where we are right now because we'll just probably we're going to have the 4th of July holiday. So I believe, and Dr. Farley mentioned this also, that what we're seeing now as far as Pennsylvania, New Jersey, are numbers that are coming from Memorial Day weekend. So we don't know what after Memorial Day weekend the protests happen. Mm-hmm. So we're probably in the middle of July. We'll kind of know where's the city at from the protest numbers. And while that's happening, unfortunately, there are spikes all over the country, and flights are being restarted at Pennsylvania and at the Philadelphia airport. So that means that we'll have more access of folks coming in to Philadelphia from places that are spiking. So fortunately, our mayor and Dr. Farley have reinstituted the self-quarantine. So if you go to Florida, you go to Texas, you go to Arizona, any state where there are spikes, you're being asked to self-quarantine for 14 days. If you're coming to Philadelphia from those places, you're being asked to self-quarantine for 14 days. This is reminiscent of the beginning where we were at, where the city of Philadelphia.
But that's on like an honor code, though. It's not like the city can follow you and say, okay, hey, you have to sit in this hotel room for 14 days.
Correct. It's just like what we did with New York. I think it worked, though. I would argue that it did work substantially for Philadelphia when we self-quarantined. We told people, if you're going to go to New York, you need to, when you come back to Philadelphia, go sit your butt home for 14 days. And the same thing, if somebody from New York came down, they would have to be self-quarantined for 14 days. And I think to some degree that stops people from traveling. Obviously, it's a deep thought. If I'm going to go around this scenario, I got to then come back home and not go anywhere for 14 days. Maybe I'm not going to go to that place, hopefully.
Right.
So I think that's where we're at. I think there's some concern. We had the PABJ, Black Journalists Association, had a meeting with SEPTA on the record, and she mentioned that there are some concerns, regarding going back to work next week. Because, everything is supposed to be open next week. Even though it's modified, still cities back to work next week. And a couple of reporters mentioned that they've been on different calls. One is a person that works at Comcast, and they were saying their company calls are people concerned about riding SEPTA again, people concerned about riding regional rail. And she mentioned that all the regions, so New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Maryland, D.C., and she mentioned Chicago have been working together since we're not in competition to each other, and they've been talking about what's best practice, what's working in each city. So the Department of Transportation heads have been all talking and suggesting different tricks that they've learned in their cleaning of the cars and protecting their employees, and also providing good service. So one of the things that came up was trash, and she did mention and did say that the stations are being cleaned more. A couple of reporters brought out they've seen some stuff at certain stations that have been closed, like dead mice or stuff, for weeks now. So she took that information and was going to check into make sure that the tracks are as clean as the station is. So, but she, I think everybody's pretty impressed with how clean our stations are now that no one's in them. Or now also because of the pandemic.
Right.
So I feel like Philadelphia, we're in a good, a cautiously optimistic place. I don't feel like it's and unfortunately, we won't know until everybody starts utilizing all these services and starts going back to restaurants, starts going back to co-working spaces. We really won't know how we are until we go to this next phase, which requires us to interact with each other.
So the city feels more confident about, or more comfortable as far as like testing, contact tracing, and because I know testing was always been a big controversial issue in Philadelphia throughout the course of the pandemic, and testing in lower income neighborhoods versus higher income neighborhoods, we don't have any more problems with that. It's something where the city feels like confidently it can track like how this thing, who has it, where it is. I mean, the other big question too, I think more important than testing, is how confident the city feels about hospital capacity, treatment capacity, if things surge back up in Philly.
Right. I think that the Dr. Farley presents a pretty strong front of cautiousness and optimism to some degree. He hesitates a lot from saying definitives. So what I will say that from my experience dealing with him and asking questions, he has been against extensive testing for a long time. However, as of last week's press conference, not the one we had on Tuesday, and we have another press conference coming up today at 1 o'clock. That's to the private to the press. He's now for extensive testing, and the example I gave was there was a study in China where they had people who tested positive but had no symptoms, kept them overnight in a negative energy room to be able to highlight and spot where COVID was going to be in that room. And after, these are people who were dead test positive, but after their overnight stay in that room, COVID was on the blankets, on the bed rail, on the table, and in the air vent. And so my question to Dr. Farley was, based on that, shouldn't everybody get tested? Because he's been against everyone getting tested. And he said, politically correct statement, I am for extensive testing. He didn't say, it wouldn't say, everybody should get tested. And the reason why he gives all the time, and I understand it, but I think we need to have a baseline. We don't have a baseline without everybody getting tested. The reason he gives that he's against a lot of testing is because he believes it gives people a false sense of security. So if you're tested this week, his famous statement is, if you're tested this week, next week you need to be tested again, because you don't show up this week doesn't mean you won't have it next week. Okay, that's
an interesting point.
And I get that. There's been some, anecdotally, there's some conversation with reporters. The question to your question is, do we really have all the testing that we need? But I think, based on the $1 million given to the black doctors from the city, I think that the hood has the ability to get tested. I don't know whether or not the citizens feel the same way. That's another question.
But see, that's interesting. Okay, so you're against extensive testing. I can kind of
He's down for it. Remember, he flip-flopped.
Yeah, he's for extensive testing. I can see his logic in terms of being against testing because I can see that, and that's another discussion. But okay, so you're for extensive testing, or if say you still maintain as the public health commissioner in the city, you still maintain that we don't need extensive testing because hey, you know what? This is just a false security blanket. Then what about the city on a regular basis updating residents on, hey, this is what hospital capacity looks like? Because I think that's the more important question. Nationwide, we keep having this national discourse around testing as if testing is going to get rid of coronavirus. But it's like, well, but we don't know. We still don't have a clear picture, whether it's in Philly, whether it's Pennsylvania, or whether it's the state. Is our hospital, is our medical care, emergency care infrastructure ready for more surges? Like how many?
Yes, it is.
Like okay, and like in Philly, do we have the number of hospital beds we need to handle whatever surge comes our way?
We, as of now, what the answer has been yes. But so the thing about this is that I think that it's difficult for news media to grab its head around is that everything is in motion. So the answer today is, and the answer 2 weeks ago, and the answer a month ago was that Philadelphia beds, the ICU and the ability to ramp up quickly, we have. Mm-hmm. The issue is to what extent ramping up, we don't know until we actually go through this. So we don't know what we don't know, but we do know that Philadelphia, and I know this from experience with my wife, she had to go to her ER for something unrelated to COVID. I know this based on the doctors group that I'm a part of, which is called the Black Health Trust, that meets every Sunday. About 10 or 12 black doctors do this live stream that we cover and that we produce. And one of the doctors is from Jefferson Health. Philadelphia has the capacity, but we haven't even scratched the surface of what COVID is. So right now we know that people can be asymptomatic, meaning they can show no symptoms but carry COVID. We didn't know that 2 months ago. We also now know that children can carry COVID, and what happens to their respiratory to their respiratory system is different than adults. So and it's a lot more serious quickly. We now know about incubation. So there's a lot of things that we now know that have to be tested by having some strain on the system. And we obviously don't want to strain the system. But to really answer your question with definitives, we have to go through it. To definitively say to you that, fortunately, I think our garbage is going to go back to regular pickup next week. We'll see how, with a 90% staff recovery, how that works out, with sanitation department. So our frontline workers, we don't, how are the grocery store workers handling this, and will we see an influx of folks infected because of the grocery store surge that we will have with everything being open? We don't know.
We just don't know. We're talking with Martin Pratt, Philly Your Black News, at Phil, at PHL Your BLK News on social media, on Twitter. See what he's talking about there, covering what's happening in Philly, particularly in City Hall. We've been talking here with him about pandemic, the city's management of pandemic. And phone lines are open, too, in case you have a question. Want to also throw in your 2 cents in this discussion. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. Once again, that is 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Anything you can add? I mean, are we hearing anything from the city, Martin, as far as, so we crossed 200 homicides about a couple of days ago in the city of Philadelphia. So we're at 202 homicides in 2020 so far. We haven't seen that at this time of the year since 2007. So that was like 13 years ago, the last time we went over 200 homicides in Philly. What's your sense of the city's plan for that, to tackle that? It looks like we're on pace to surpass the record set last year in homicide. So there's obviously, we got a big violence problem on top of the pandemic. But is the mayor, the city manager, anyone kind of saying anything or being alarmed about it?
I definitely can't speak to that as far as the mayor or the city manager, only because I haven't asked them that question. I'll be glad to ask them that question today at the press conference today. I would say that in the past, the other reporters that asked that question, there was an intensive answering that happened, and so I think that they're definitely, wanting to make sure that there are enough resources left. I think one of the issues has been the budget, and so I know that Philadelphia has allocated a certain amount for gun violence prevention. And that allocation, I don't know the numbers now, but I know they were doing $1 million with a $2 million budget just for gun violence prevention last year. I don't know what the numbers are now based on the new budget. That would be interesting to see, since certain things were taken away from the police department. I know that the community is definitely, I've seen a lot online, and I'm a part of a gun violence prevention community huddle that actually next week I'll be leading, and it happens with about 6 different nonprofits. We meet on Wednesdays, and we talk about what's upcoming and what's happening in the streets. And it's definitely increased. We definitely know that it's increased. We definitely know that, but the question is, what are we going to do about it? And I don't know, what the city is willing to say on the record. Privately, I know that the commissioner is really concerned. I'll say that. I spoke to her privately.
Okay, got it. We got Charles from Northern Liberties, who's calling in for a reality check. We got Martin Pratt here from Philly Your Black News. Charles is a good name. What's happening? Welcome to Reality Check.
Good morning, Charles, number 1. This is Charles, number 18.
All right.
I have a question for Martin. Martin, has the Black Doctors Group that you have been producing and meeting with made any comment on what people can do to get a heads up on whether or not they are becoming sick early enough so that we can avoid getting on ventilators?
Yes. So part of what was suggested, and this is coming from Dr. Randall Maxey, who's he was the former head of the National Medical Association, which is the Black Doctors National Association of Black Doctors. Also, Dr. Richard Williams, both of them, and Dr. Cecil Moody, they share a patent on a new device to kill COVID within the lungs using UV. So there's actually a patent by Black doctors that they're testing out now, a device that will kill COVID in the lungs using UV ray light. It's gonna be kind of cool. But anyway, Dr. Maxey says we should be now wearing masks, washing our hands, social distancing, and preparing our immune systems by I believe it's and I have to get the milligrams so I can come back next week with the exact milligrams when we need to be taking D3. We need to be taking black seed oil. We need to be also going and making sure anytime that we feel that we have a symptom, getting tested. He's a strong proponent of getting tested and making sure that you don't have the virus.
No, thanks, Charles, for that question.
Also, next week he's telling people to stay. This week, the weekend, he's telling they're going to tell people on Sunday or Friday for the 4th of July just to avoid crowds and stay home.
Just stay home.
Do not go out on 4th of July.
No, don't do it. Charles, thanks for calling in. Let me go to George out of Center City, who's calling in for a reality check. George.
Charles, how you doing? Is he still there?
Hey, what's happening? He is, yeah.
What is his position? He's a reporter, or what do you do?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, yes. Hi, I produced, I'm the owner and publisher of Philly Your Black News.
Oh, I thought you worked for the city, and you was giving what they plan on doing, because this violence program, what you're saying, money was stopped or slow the violence down, paying these groups?
We don't, I said I didn't know based on the new budget. I knew the budget from last year and what they were giving out as grants.
From last year, whatever they got paid, they didn't do nothing for that, right? I mean, basically, I can say that. They didn't do anything. They got paid for nothing.
I would disagree with you.
Years, they got, pardon me?
I would disagree with you.
Well, tell me why would you?
I personally know 7 organizations that are on the streets right now. You're saying the grants that were given out were not? They did nothing for the grants that were given out.
Yeah, I'm talking about this gun violence money. I ain't talking about
Right. It went out to 40 different organizations. I know of 7 of those organizations, 2 in West Philly.
Say the part again. You're talking.
I'm sorry. Maybe my mic. Let me make sure. Can you hear me?
Now I can better.
Okay, sorry about that. My mic. I was saying that I'm familiar with 7 organizations here in West Philly. I'm sorry, 7 organizations that got the grants and 2 in West Philly that actually have programs that were sustained because they got the grants from the city for the gun violence prevention grants. I can't speak to what the gun violence prevention department does, but I can speak to the organizations because I went through the process myself, and I'm on the community huddle is a nonprofit effort to make sure that the persons who got the grants are supported internally by other nonprofits.
Let me say it like this here. How many gun violence, how many of these gun joints, do you know these gun places where they sell guns at? Tell me one organization that you know went and protested, said anything about it, or done anything about it. Second thing is that basically it's just a hub there that they get paid for nothing. Because it pays for them to be in the business of people killing because then they don't, they need them. That's what they have became. The city have made that a crutch that people go around and what we call as death hustlers. They play on the system. As long as there's shootings and craziness, then they're going to get paid. And that's the first thing the mayor should have.
These are organizations. I would argue with you though that these are organizations, and I personally know them, that are doing basketball programs. These are not organizations being paid to sit on services. These are organizations that are out in the streets actually doing stuff block by block. To your point, though, these are not organizations that are advocacy against guns. These are organizations that are supposed to provide services, alternatives for our young people to not get involved in gun violence.
We're talking about 2 different things, and that's where the audience and the listeners get confused. What you're doing and what your people is doing is advocating for kids. We're talking about these hardcore, grown-behind men and women who are out here shooting at each other for no apparent reason. It ain't about money. That's what we're talking about. Now, those groups are dealing with kids and all this basketball stuff. Of course, they should get more money. We're talking about violence. That's what gets me. Every time somebody in a room with the mayor, first thing they start talking about, oh, well, we're going to have a lead. The ones that's doing the killing and the shootings is not the ones that's the problem. They're the problem.
So what you're saying, the money is not being directed. You're saying the money is not being directed adequately at the actual aggressors or the people committing crime. The money's only being developed to keep kids and programming safe while that violence is happening.
Absolutely. And that's where people mix the 2 up. They make it sound like, oh, we're going to use this money for these kids, and we're going to say we're trying to stop the violence. They ain't trying to stop nothing. The more violence, the more they can hit the mayor up for more money. That's all it is. It's a straight
Can I ask your listener one question?
Go ahead real quick.
One question. What suggested program, one program, give me a suggestion, one program that can be a solution?
One program, what you mean with the gun violence?
Yeah, what can stop?
What's an ideal program for you, George?
Well, we're talking about, I ain't never heard of your programs, and I would agree. Because you said the right thing, that y'all dealing with youth, and you got a proof of what they got to do. But you start telling me about these hardcore, grown-behind men that's running around here every day. I don't even know what group handles them because I don't see them out in the streets, and I'm out here every day. Every day. Don't tell me about, oh, we was at the basketball game, we took them to this. You took kids. You didn't take adults. You didn't do anything for adults. I mean, listen. Don't mix kids up with adults and give adults kids credit. The kids.
That's a good point. I mean, that's a good point, George. I mean, I'll give you that point. As far as how expansive are these programs? Like, who exactly? We do need a little bit more of a deep dive, I think. I gotta let you go too, George. But to George's point, a little bit a deeper dive on the demographics, the specific age groups of folks that different groups are are responding to or servicing. I think there's just some fair questions there. There's fair questions about exactly kind of getting a real good sense of exactly what do all these various groups do, because there's a huge ecosystem, and that has been an issue in Philadelphia for quite a long time. You've always had this vast network or ecosystem of organizations, of nonprofits, of advocacy groups, of people who, grassroots groups, community groups who are on the ground or who claim to be on the ground, but then the problems persist. And so, you wonder about that. Hey, Martin, I got to let you go because I got to go to break. Martin Pratt, Philly Your Black News, looking forward to talking with you next week about different issues happening in and outside of Philadelphia. Go to @PHL Your Black News, Your BLK News. We're going to take a break. Tighten out New Jersey. Hold on 1 second. I think if we still have them, we'll take your call before we head into the break. I think we're supposed to be talking with OJ Spivey next. We're going to get into a little sports session here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, Word TV, wordradio.com, Word app. We'll be right back.
Check out the Source lineup on Word Radio. Mondays, get ready for the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith. On Tuesdays, it's Andrea Lawful Sanders. Then on Wednesdays, it's the Black Women's Leadership Council. On Thursdays, it's a second helping of Andrea Lawful Sanders. And on Fridays, it's Tiffany Bacon. Don't miss the Source. Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. and Fridays, 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. Exclusively on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app.
Warning. If you're drowning in debt you can't afford, do not let the credit card companies trick you into thinking that you have to pay it all back, because you don't. What the credit card companies don't want you to know is that there's actually a way to get debt-free without paying off your entire debt or going bankrupt. If you have $10,000 or more in credit card debt, you have the right to let us settle that debt for a fraction of what you owe. For free information, call Credit Associates now. 1-800-965-5269. We'll even show you how much money you could save. If you can't afford to pay off all your debt, do not let the credit card companies trick you into thinking that you have to. Call Credit Associates for free information on how to get debt-free faster than you ever thought possible, without debt consolidation or bankruptcy. We depend on your success and offer a guarantee, so there's no risk to call. For free information, call now. 1-800-965-5269. That's 1-800-965-5269. 1-800-965-5269.
No fear, just facts. This is WURD, independent black media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. Let me check Titan out of Jersey, who'd been waiting patiently for a Reality Check while we had Martin Pratt from Philly Your Black News. Titan?
Hey, what's up, Brother Charles? Is Brother Martin still on the phone with us?
He's not, unfortunately. We had to let him go, but go ahead if you got a question or something. I can throw it out there on Twitter and have him respond.
Yeah, Charles, this is my thing, man. Appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate what the young brother's doing. But he mentioned a couple things. The study in China with the people in the room, the zero negative and things like that. Mm-hmm. We have to get that information to our people because, I do the taller lid thing, right? In February, Bloomberg puts this out there, but yet the black news network's not putting it out there that it could come through the toilets, man. Like, we need to have a pair do infrastructure programs, get plumbing right in black houses.
Yeah.
You understand? And this could be economic stimulus and things like that. But I'm going to reach out to the brothers to see if we can get some things going because, we as men and as a community, Charles, have to stay abreast of everything that's happening, not just American news. The brother told you, this studies in China around the world, it's going on. And I'm going to end on that, man. And I thank you for everything you do, brother.
Hey, thank you, brother. I appreciate you too, Titan. And spot on with that observation. We really have to. One, it's a matter of, specifically when we talk about black media and we here at WRD, we really try to, accomplish that or achieve that as best we can, trying to collect and curate and distribute, share that information as best we can. It is very difficult to do for a couple of reasons at a time like this. One, we've got so many different crises or pockets of crises happening all at once. And just trying to prioritize, on any given day, on each day, well, what crisis to talk about today? What do people want to hear? Then there's the pressure, obviously, of the audience that, because it's like, you still, especially your business, like say a WRD or any other black news outlet for that example. So you want people to keep coming back. And so it's just making those very difficult, very tough decisions. Cause some people out there, not you, Titan, will tune out when you start getting into deep, discussions about structural issues or about important issues. Like, you just mentioned it, like about different studies that are happening. Like, for example, sometimes, even here on Reality Check, I may want to go into a conversation. I've done in the past a conversation about an environmental study or something, and then somebody calls in, but this ain't about Philly. It's not local enough. Or like, well, what's that got to do with me and the price of bread? And it's like, well, it has a whole lot to do with you and the price of bread, just like Titan said. Or about, for example, infrastructure, the importance of that. How now do we, as a people, collectively, as a community, how do we economically recover? During times of crises, there are also opportunities. There are opportunities there. And so, we have to have those conversations. Sometimes they're not as sensationalistic. They're not as trend-worthy or hashtagable as, say, a conversation about, something someone tweeted, or some statue that was taken down, or some violent video that goes viral. But these are important, very significant discussions about quality of life. And so that's something I try to do, at least here on Reality Check each day, is just hit on those structural and quality of life issues, and sometimes throw in between like the politics and stuff like that. And it's that becomes a tough task for Black media because it's also under-resourced. We're under-resourced. I think you just had some major mainstream news network or radio network created their own Black news network, and it's not even Black owned, right? Here we are, Black media is actually doing the job, and then in the Black Lives Matter moment, you have multi-billion dollar conglomerates, media conglomerates, who are like, instead of making the investments in existing Black media like a WURD that's doing the job, that's on the ground, they want to reinvent the wheel. And then they want to bamboozle you and hoodwink you into just basically giving them the money and then trusting them to decide on what is valuable or worthy Black focused or Black oriented news, as opposed to just making those investments in independent Black media or Black owned media like a WURD. So there's the resource issue that's always a challenge as well, in terms of making sure that we have the resources to capture that kind of information. But we do the best that we can with especially in very very crisis moments or really testing times like this. But Titan, thanks for bringing that up. Really appreciate that. Well, we got OJ Spivey, longtime sports analyst, sports thought leader, who's joining us now. You want to go to @OJ Philly for more there. He writes occasionally for The Undefeated, and you hear him here on WURD at times, also with the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists. And OJ, it's been a while, joins us by phone here on Reality Check. OJ, what's good?
Yeah, it has been a while, Charles. Great to be on with you once again.
All right, good. Yeah, we can't make, we have to make sure that this is more frequent, right? So I appreciate this, that it's not sparse. Actually, talk about where the sports world is right now, OJ, in relation to pandemic, protests, and politics. How's the sports world adapting to all of this?
Well, first of all, what you have to understand is sports is a business. It's a business just like any other that we've seen that's been suffering, whether it's been retail, whether it's been any other types of business here in the United States, here across the world, and they're adjusting. They're adjusting just like any other entity. And what they're trying to do now is for months and months, they're trying to figure it out. They were trying to figure it out just as much as any other company or corporation. And now is the time where you see Major League Baseball and the NBA. They have a structure in place. Again, they're playing it by ear just like everyone else. You're a person where you're figuring out how you're going to go into the office, working remotely, things of that nature. Of course, in sports, you can't do that. So
Right.
you have the so-called bubble in Orlando, Florida for the NBA. And you also have with Major League Baseball, they're going to start spring training in their own stadiums as opposed to their regular spots in Arizona and Florida. But again, it's not foolproof. They don't have a cure like any of us do. You are seeing athletes, you are seeing the players, you are seeing the coaches. Some coaches still testing positive. So what they're going to do is every other day, if not every day, players are going to be tested. Players, coaches, staff, they're going to be tested for the COVID-19 virus, and they're just going to take it from there. And
could you see a situation?
Try and play.
Yeah. And could you see a situation, OJ, where because we are starting to see like rumbles of or instances of like college athletes, particularly black college athletes or black football players, sort of revolting against coaches and certain programs and saying, hey, you know what, it's not safe out there. I don't want to go to practice, or we're making specific demands here for how we're treated or how we're cared for, looked out for during this pandemic. Could we be seeing like the makings or the rumblings of like black athlete, especially revolts? I'm more curious about whether or not that happens on a larger scale on the professional level, whether it's black men or women, whether it's NBA, NFL, WNBA, just concerns that get, just become so prominent that they just start outright revolting or boycotting the teams themselves.
Well, it's great to see, first of all, Charles, because one thing the players are realizing is that they have all the power. They have all the power. They know if they're not on the field, if they're not on the court, there is no league. There is no league. There is no college athletics. They're starting to realize that. We maybe want to ask what took them so long, but it's something like a pandemic for them to realize how much power they have. As a professional, yes, you have more things in place to protect you at a certain at a certain amount, at a certain level. But with college athletes, as you mentioned, yes, these men and women, they're being asked to play with not any conditions, without any safety guidelines. And in fact, some college programs are asking their athletes to sign a waiver if they get sick, if they do contract the virus, that the colleges, the coaches, they're not liable if they do get sick. And one of the misconceptions is, and I hear this from a lot of sports hosts, a lot of journalists, and you really need to pull back on this because people are assuming that since these athletes are young, they're in their early 20s, early to mid 20s, some even still teenagers, that, okay, if they get the virus, they'll be okay. I know a lot of young people who have autoimmune diseases. I know a lot of young people who have other types of ailments to where if they do get sick, it's a problem for them. So we just can't assume that every young person who will get the virus, they'll just get over it. They'll be quarantined for 14 days and they'll get over it. That's naive and narrow-minded.
Right. No, I agree with that. I mean, that's something that, we've been having this discussion repeatedly on this program about people needing to know more about how bad the virus can be when you get it. And even there is no such thing as really a full recovery. It can do some significant damage, but even if you're young, to your lungs, to your immune system.
Right.
That's a lifetime of
damage. Yes.
Exactly.
And I'm hoping, to go back to your original question, I'm hoping that this keeps on as we're seeing all the protests in the country and around the world. I hope the protests continue with the athletes because, again, they're realizing that they hold all the power. And you just can't go out and get other people to replace them as if, you have folks in, non-union tech companies where, okay, if you don't want to work here, we'll just get someone else out on the street. It's not that easy.
We've been talking with OJ Spivey of OJS Media. sports enthusiast, critic, analyst, writes occasion for the Undefeated. You hear him here on WURD. We're going to bring you back on more often, OJ. I got to let you go, unfortunately. But let's get you back on maybe next week and continue this discussion about the business of sports. So this is good because we see each other on Twitter quite a bit, and I love that. So I'm like, I keep forgetting I got to get this brother on so we can kind of break this down and unpack it and texturize it a little bit more. But really appreciate your time this midday morning. All right. Okay, be safe out there, OJ. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon. Okay, let's take a quick break. And phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Start every Sunday the right way with Sunday Morning Praise, hosted by the Reverend Louise Williams Bishop, every Sunday morning beginning at 6 a.m. right here on WURD 96.1 FM and 900 AM, streaming live at wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app.
Seniors, does your doctor regularly reach out to check on you? Can you walk into your doctor's office and see them if you need to? Do you have your doctor's cell phone number and can you call them anytime, day or night? At Dedicated Senior Medical Center, their only specialty is caring for seniors. Dedicated makes it easy to get the primary care you deserve. Doctors spend more time with patients than the doctors you may be used to. They offer telehealth visits, help you get your medications, and even make sure you get to your appointments. If your doctor isn't treating you like family, it's time to say yes to Dedicated Senior Medical Center. Call Dedicated Senior Medical Center today to schedule a visit and find out what you're missing. Call 267-443-1900. That's 267-443-1900. Appointments are available now.
Support independent black media and join the onWURD movement now at 215-425-7875 or visit wordradio.com. Tune in every Saturday at 6 p.m. to Recovery Talk 101 with your host, Rick Ford, talking about addiction, treatment, and recovery right here on Word Radio. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
Okay, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM if you're listening within Greater Philly, Delaware Valley. Beyond, though, however, throughout the nation, we are live streamed at Word Radio, WURDradio.com, and by Word TV on YouTube and Facebook Live, and by Word app. You can take it all over the globe with you, and many of you do. We have many listening in throughout the nation and throughout the world on Reality Check WURD. Joining us now is attorney Lee Merritt, civil rights lawyer, also founder and lead partner of Merritt Law and Associates. Go to @MerrittLaw, by the way, on social media, on Twitter. He's also the founder of the Grassroots Law Project. They are putting in place a number of truth, justice, and reconciliation commissions, specifically in the cities of San Francisco, Boston, and Philly. He's here to talk about that today here on Reality Check. Lee, how are you doing?
Great. How are you?
All right, good. We finally got you, and I appreciate your time. What exactly are these truth, justice, and reconciliation commissions, and why exactly these three cities? Is it just these three cities that you're going to start with? Why did you pick these specific few?
Well, to answer first the question of what are the committees or commissions, I should say, you will recall, or history will recall, at the end of the South African apartheid struggle, and I don't know if I should say that at the end, but at a critical juncture, when there was a transition of power, kind of like what we're seeing today, where there was international protests, where there were protests in all 50 states about apartheid. There were these Truth and Reconciliation Commissions that came together to put on trial individuals who had committed human rights atrocities during the apartheid period to enforce apartheid laws. We're at that moment in America where we're reckoning with the fact that it's our law enforcement that is systemically racist. It's our courts that's systemically oppressing people of African descent or African Americans, and it's not enough just to acknowledge it. There are who continue to violate the human rights of African American people. So we want to identify them. And to go on to answer your next question, which was, is it just these three cities? These are the three district attorneys that we trust with this responsibility for now. We certainly want to engage district attorneys all over the country, and we know that grassroots organizers are currently engaging those DAs about holding people accountable. I know that I have families that are not in those regions that we're working on holding the officers accountable. And accountability is the part of this conversation that what these commissions are about. It's one thing to acknowledge that Black Lives Matter, but it's time to hold the people who are responsible for taking Black lives accountable.
Yeah, yeah. How are these commissions structured specifically? Like, who sits on the commission specifically? I know we have the prosecutors or the DAs in each of these cities, but what other stakeholders are on them? And also, does it have any sort of sense it's being done in conjunction or partnership with a city prosecutor, with a DA, a government official? Is there any sort of policy bite or regulatory teeth to these commissions that we see coming out of them?
And so the answer to that question is going to be regional. And as these commissions grow throughout other regions, the responses are going to be regional. And when I say it's going to be regional, in Philadelphia, for example, the district attorney has been a progressive DA who has been taking on initiatives like identifying bad cops or identifying cops who lie at trial in order to wrongfully incarcerate people of African descent. And he's blacklisted them, and he's taken them off the list of police officers who are even allowed to testify in his trial. That's sort of already the work, the kind of work that the commission would do. It would come up with policy-based solutions for ongoing systemic problems. But it would go beyond that. It would identify those officers who, for example, may have been guilty of murder, but for the lives of one of these other officers getting them off. And it would say, all right, well, there's no statute of limitations on murder. Can we try this person? There would be a commission of whether or not this person should be put on trial. And how those commissions function, who sits on them, will again be a regional question that we're building as we go. We're certainly building coalitions around Philadelphia of families, like the family of Jeffrey Dennis, who was murdered on tape, and because of politics, the officer was taken off the street, but there was no criminal accountability. So I, as an attorney who represents that family, who works in conjunction, that's one of the first cases I'm bringing up before this commission to say that whether Richard Nicoletti should be put on criminal trial. And I certainly think he should. And the same in Delaware. I don't know if you heard about the young brother in Milford, Delaware, Mr. Brandon Roberts. He was suffering a mental health crisis. It was just recently. Right. He was suffering a mental health crisis. He called the police on himself to say, "Hey, I need to get some help. I'm having a breakdown." His wife got on the phone, or his fiance, I should say, got on the phone and said, "Please don't kill him. We just need you to get him out of here," because she knew. And of course, they came, and within 3 seconds of them opening the door, they shot him to death. Within 3 seconds. There's been no criminal accountability in that case. These commissions are places that family can go to and say, hey, urgently, we don't just want to file a lawsuit and sue Milford. We want the person who murdered our son held accountable. It was a criminal act.
I'm real curious too, as far as these commissions, who participates in them. Like, what's the response been like from like the law enforcement agencies? I'm glad you threw courts in there too, because we don't talk enough about, we don't look at or explore how do we hold judges accountable in different civil and criminal court systems, and how they continually do a disservice to, or not all judges, but a lot of judges do a disservice to Black people, Black families. And so, but what about them participating in these commissions? What's the response been like from law enforcement, courts, judicial officers in those cities?
Well, to first deal with holding judges accountable, it is actually impossible in our current judicial system to hold judges accountable. They have absolute immunity to most forms of suit or criminal prosecution. The barriers put in place to hold judges accountable for some of the most heinous crimes just simply don't exist. in the American judicial system. In fact, it was set up that way. And so when we say the courts aren't broken or the judicial system isn't broken, that's what we're referring to. We're saying, no, that's how it's supposed to operate. Those judges get to do whatever they want with no accountability. And they get a lifetime appointment in most instances. And so that's what's so dangerous about, for example, Trump stacking these benches. What if we had a commission outside of this that says, look, we may not be able to hold you criminally accountable, but there is something that we can do as regionally to get this person who's responsible for hundreds sometimes of black people going to prison for no reason. And I was just reading an article this morning. And so, whether or not in Philadelphia or in Boston or in San Francisco they want to allow those same judges to be a part of the commission, I would actually object to that. But if there are judges who the community trusts, I know in Dallas County, for example, we ran a whole slate of judges in Houston, that county as well. You may recall it was big national news that we had an all-female black bench, essentially, or a huge black bench in the region. And so, we would, if and when the commissions come to Dallas County, we would certainly want to engage some of those judges. But some of the other judges, we would want to hold accountable as well.
Well, so how do we know that the commissions will work? Like, what's the performance metric for these truth justice, these TJR commissions, right? Like, how do you, will you reach a certain benchmark? Is there certain criteria that you've laid out, like, like a list of check boxes or boxes that you have to mark off to know, hey, you know what, this was a successful commission. This really did operate or perform the way we wanted it to perform. It reached certain goals and objectives.
And the answer to that is going to be whether or not the people who are in the streets get the relief that they're seeking from these commissions, right? And so we're not allowed to tell a region what is a win for them. I can tell you that I represent a lot of families in each of these regions, and you'll start to see even on social media check boxes being up here, and it says, has this person been arrested? Check. Has this person been fired? Check. Has this person been incarcerated? Have they been sentenced, right? And until all those boxes are checked, people in the streets are not satisfied. I think that's a nice measuring rod for the TJRC, which is whether or not these families are getting the justice as they define it as a community.
So when we this is one thing I'm just not clear on, as far as like the Truth, Justice, Reconciliation Commissions, in terms of like whether or not they'll work. I mean, at the end of it, will a police officer, will a judge, will some of you were saying like, okay, well, we can't, they're protected by absolute immunity and qualified immunity for the police officers too. But does it transfer somehow once you've laid all this out in a commission? Does it transfer somehow into a long game lawsuit or a cluster of lawsuits, class action suits, something tangible that actually kind of starts to some kind of mechanism that goes into instant operation or immediate activation once you've established that, hey, listen, a violation of human rights was committed here. So what's the next step in terms of recourse for those victims?
Perfect. And so that's the reason I'm speaking by analogy or using some of the cases that I'm currently working, because for each case, even in some cases in the same region, the outcome or the method is going to be different. So for Jeffrey Dennis, for example, that commission could decide this case should go to trial, that there was a crime that occurred here, or there's probable cause that a crime that occurred, but our court system failed that family and cut off access to the court for some case-specific technical reasons. Well, is there enough evidence here to bring this person up on federal charges? Should the commission recommend federal charges to the U.S. Attorney's Office based on what we have? And that question has been answered by a lot of federal or U.S. attorneys. The answer is no, because the current state of the federal law doesn't allow for reckless prosecutions of officers, only willful prosecutions of officers. That language in Section 242 of the Code is being hotly debated in D.C. right now. So should the commissions make a recommendation to the senators in that region that the law change in order to hold them accountable? The commission in each region is going to be a living entity that responds to the specific fact pattern that they're dealing with.
We've been talking with, if you just now been tuning in, we've been talking with Lee Merritt, Esquire, attorney, civil rights attorney. You know him as well. You may even follow him on social media at Merritt Law. For more on Twitter, if you want to follow him there, see what he's up to. He's also founder of the newly minted Grassroots Law Project, and they are putting truth, justice, and reconciliation commissions in play in major cities, including San Francisco, Boston, and yes, in Philadelphia as well. They are working in tandem with Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner. I've been in touch with his office. I'm sure when we have him back on, we'll talk with him a little bit more about that. Lee, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And good luck to you out there. And thanks so much for your work.
No problem. Thank you. God bless.
All right. You too. Take care. Okay, let's take a break here while we're on Reality Check. And I do appreciate Lee Merritt finally making some time for us. Let's, after we come back from this break, we'll be talking with the editors of The Bullhorn. It's a fairly new citywide student newspaper in the city of Philadelphia, The Bullhorn. And we're going to be talking with Caitlin Rodriguez, the communications director for that, and also Aiden Gonzalez, who is the chief editor, masterman for the Bullhorn newspaper, and talking about youth journalism and activism in a time like this. Ongoing conversations we're having here. I'm trying to bring those to you weekly here on Reality Check with seeing how young people get activated in a moment like this. Here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
These are unprecedented times. Challenging how the YMCA works to strengthen community as we have for nearly 170 years. But we've always found ways to help people and communities in times of crisis. Right now, Ys across the country are providing emergency childcare, shelter, food programs, and outreach to seniors. But we can't do it alone. Whether you're connected to the Y or have a fond Y memory, we need you to stay with us. Reach out to your local Y today and stay with us for a better us.
Family Therapy Vignette Moments with Dr. Lucille Ijoy.
Being kind behind the mask. Let us train our eyes and our hearts to show a loving attitude. If you're using a mask, be kind behind the mask. I see worried eyes, painful hearts, stressed bodies behind the mask. Don't let the mask make you mean. 6 feet back, everybody, and where's your mask? No, let's not do it like that. Let's smile behind the mask. Express kindness behind the mask. Good morning. Can we say that behind the mask? Let somebody stay in a spiritual way, being kind behind the mask. And now to our wonderful men and fathers, grab your partner, maybe your children, dance. I hope you dance. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. It's June. We all love you.
We are progressive and proud and interactive. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at onWURD. This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Streaming live at wordradio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check here on the home of Black Talk Media, WURD. It's your daily dose of public affairs, politics, public policy here on Reality Check. We are in the Thursday edition. This is the end of the week edition of Reality Check on Thursdays. You know, we're off on Fridays. We'll be back, I'm sure, God willing, on Monday, 10 a.m. sharp. Continue to go to @EllisonReport on Twitter.com. Also, hashtag Reality Check. But I know I see you all, and good morning to you all watching us now. Good afternoon, because we are now a minute past noon. Good afternoon to folks watching us on Facebook Live, facebook.com/4word. Thanks so much, KSU Sarah. She's a great show, Charles. You ask all the right questions. Thank you. I appreciate that. Good morning. Now, good afternoon to you, Rafael Suleiman. Good afternoon to Lois Rubin Marks. Philly Cleaning felt like George was on it, and Diane Fassett was like George always keeping it real. And appreciate everyone. Good morning to you. Good afternoon now, Nakia Twin Campbell. Appreciate you. And a lot of other folks, Shirley J. Carter, Arnetta Pierce, watching from Arizona. Arnetta, thank you. Appreciate that. So Arnetta Pierce watching from Arizona. We got a lot of folks from around the country listening. And good afternoon to Michelle Watson, who is watching from Ketchikan, Alaska. Appreciate that. So I have not been to Alaska. I want to get out there one day. So I hear there's some real scenic stuff going on in Alaska, so we'll get out there one day. Joining us now is Caitlin Rodriguez and also Aiden Gonzalez. Caitlin Rodriguez is Communications and Design Director for the Bullhorn newspaper, and Aiden Gonzalez, Masterman, who goes to Masterman High School, is Chief Editor at the Bullhorn, which is Philly's citywide student newspaper. Go to the bullhornnews.com for more there to see what they're talking about, what they're reporting on. Both of them join me by phone to talk a little bit about the Bullhorn and about youth voices and activism in a time like this. How are you both doing? Good afternoon.
Hi, thank you.
Excellent. So, you know what, Aiden, I'll go to you first, and Caitlin, you can also jump in on this. The Bullhorn, what triggered this? What inspired this? Because this is something that's fairly recent and new. So how did this all come about?
Yeah, so it came out of a Philadelphia Student Union meeting at the Masterman chapter, and we were thinking about what we wanted to do with the rest of our year. It was like early November-ish, and just thinking about how we wanted to use our time, and we came up with all of these ideas about collaborating with other schools on projects and like these huge things, and we realized that we had no way to contact schools and students from other schools, and so we kind of backtracked and realized that we needed to make that space before we start any district-wide project. So we started emailing teachers, English teachers from across the district, and putting together. That's where we are now.
Fascinating. And again, that raises another question. And Caitlin, you can jump in on this one. What exactly is your core audience? So is it primarily students, or is it a mix of students but also adults in Philly to offer a sense of, or to provide perspective on, hey, this is what's on the minds of young people, of Gen Zers, of high schoolers in the city of Philadelphia?
It's primarily for anyone who views our newspaper, but it's just to showcase the voices of students and to get our voice out there about student matters, about matters that we personally feel strong on, and about matters that are going on in the school district.
Yeah, what's the response been like? I'll throw this out here to both of you. What's the response been like thus far? You know, it's a recent newspaper. A lot of people may not even realize that you have, and I don't want to say newspaper, that's kind of an old school term, right? Because it's online. Unless, I mean, there's a print version that I'm not aware of, but it's all online, correct?
It's all online right now. We're working on in-print editions and upgrading our website, but since we're an independent organization, we have little funding and little, we're still learning about how that's going to work out. So yeah.
Okay.
Our printed editions in the fall.
Got it. You know, kind of moving forward on that. So what's the response been like thus far? Like people been sort of excited. What's like the audience numbers been looking like, and any buzz kind of around the Bullhorn? I know you all were featured recently in our partner publication, our partner outlet, the Philadelphia Citizen, which I write for on a regular basis. So what's that all been like so far?
Yeah, we've had a lot of our first day, we had over 800 views on our website, which was kind of unexpected. And since then, I think we've had close to 3,000 views. Our website launched on May 1st. And yeah, I don't think that I have seen any negative responses. So far, it's been really supportive, which is great. And actually, earlier today, Mallory Fix-Lopez from the school board subscribed to our newsletter, so that was really exciting.
Okay, no, that's good to know. Good to hear. Good to know. Hopefully, you get all the school board members, and the school superintendent himself. They all need to sign up for something like that. So, what and both of you can jump in here, Caitlin. But I think that was just Caitlin who was just talking just now. Was that Aiden? Aiden, okay. Caitlin, I'll make sure as we're going into this conversation, I'll be sure to kind of be able to distinguish your voices. But Caitlin, and then Aiden, you can jump in on this. What are the topics, or what are you looking at or envisioning as far as the overall mission of the Bullhorn in terms of topics that you want to cover, the types of conversations and discourse you want to encourage inside the pages of the Bullhorns? What specifically are you covering now, for example?
Right now, we're just covering things that are going on both politically and also with teenagers. So recently we had a couple articles going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, and some of those students wrote about, who are part of our Bullhorn Association, they wrote about like going down to the protests and everything that's going on right now. Most of the matters are just timely matters and also going on with school district and funding.
So this is kind of like, and Aiden, feel free to jump in on there as far as like the topics and maybe even what your ideation process is like, what you're brainstorming for future coverage. But this sounds like it's like a confederation of different schools and youth and student groups who now have a Bullhorn. You know, they have a platform that they can channel their perspectives and their voices and concerns and ideas through.
Yeah. A big idea for what I think we should focus on is like the great things that are going on in our schools, because often Philly schools are given this bad reputation, especially in like people who don't live in Philadelphia, and just highlighting that many of us are doing so many great things and we're worthy of like investing in. And I think that for me, one of the biggest things that I want to talk about in the Bullhorn is the funding crisis and Pennsylvania's insanely inequitable funding. And I think that kind of starts with proving that it's sad that we have to prove, but proving that Philadelphia's schools have a lot of potential and they're just not being given the resources they need to be fully supported. And but also keeping our own district in line and letting them know what we think about things, which is like a great thing about the Bullhorn is that we're completely independent, and so we don't have to censor ourselves or filter ourselves when it comes to what we say about our schools and what we say about the district. And so, yeah, keeping the district in line and telling them what students think of their decisions, and not just telling them, but telling the whole city and anybody who wants to hear about it.
Yeah, no, that's very important to kind of maintain that independent voice. We're talking, if you're just now tuning in, having a discussion with the lead team of the Bullhorn. It's a fairly new citywide Philadelphia student newspaper. Go to for more information on it and also some good reading as well. The bullhornnews.com. I was actually myself, I was impressed with the caliber of writing here at the Bullhorn. So already off to a real good start. We're talking with Caitlin Rodriguez, who is communications and design team lead for the Bullhorn, and Aiden Gonzalez, who goes to Masterman High School. Caitlin, you go to
Kappa.
Performing Arts?
Yeah, Kappa.
Okay, right. That's right. You go to the City Academy for Performing Arts as well. So I want to make sure I throw your school in there, give them a shout out as well. And I remember Performing Arts. So I had a long time ago. I had a girlfriend who went to Performing Arts High School a long time ago, eons before I went to college. So very familiar with Performing Arts. Masterman High School, and she is the primary team lead and editor, Aiden Gonzalez, who also kickstarted the newspaper, The Bullhorn. Are you all receiving guidance from any? I remember in the beginning you were talking about how you had reached out to English teachers, et cetera, faculty in different schools. So are you receiving guidance from any adults, any like professionals, journalism professionals, writers, et cetera, on how to carry this out?
As of right now, we don't have any guidance. We're mostly basically student run, and we all come up with our own ideas and our own ways to do things. We do get requests, like through email and everything, for adults to help us and with journaling, with writing, or requests, how to benefit our website. But right now, we don't have guidance from adults.
Okay. Is that something that you're like actively looking for, or is that something you like it this way? You like it where, you know what, that's fine if we need the advice, if we have a question about something, or if we're trying to explore a new way of operating or a new type of topic, we'll call you when we need you.
Well, we have it's kind of like a tricky balance, because we definitely want to maintain our status as student-run. No adults have to check what we say and okay it before it gets published.
Right.
But it's like it's kind of hard to do. We have a kind of informal, kind of growing more formal relationship with a professor of journalism at St. Joseph's University, who he's actually a parent of a student at SLA Beaver, and he saw the flyers that we put up around the school, and he was interested, so he reached out and gave us a this was really, really interesting. He was able to fit into an hour and a half presentation, 6 weeks worth of, well, clearly not as in depth, but 6 weeks worth of journalism class. But most of the, like Caitlin said, everything that gets published, no adult is okaying it or reading it over before it gets published. So we can be 100% honest.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good, maintain that. Yeah, that would be my advice, so, because, you could get an adult in there and they could kind of they could put, I'm not saying that they would, but you could get into a situation where they could sort of slow things down, or, they might want to inject or insert, their own point of view in it. But I like that setup, just keeping it informal definitely is always good to get advice and guidance from adults, maybe ideas. But they don't need to be kind of in the management phase of things, which gets to my next question about, how are you all deciding on leadership, on writers? How are you making editorial decisions? How do you decide that, hey, okay, these are the topics that we'd like to highlight or focus on for this particular issue? Or is it, more of a sort of very, kind of open, loose kind of management style? You're just like, hey, you know what? If it sounds interesting, if it's something that that has a lot of texture and substance to it, we'll just go ahead and cover it. We'll accept people. It's just an open submission policy.
So Aiden, she designed this whole thing through GroupMe, where we all have a big group chat with everyone from the Bullhorn, and then different subcategories. So we have our editorial team, our design team, our communications team, and our reporters team. And from there, that's how we kind of get around things. And we also have these, right now it's every other week, meetings about what to cover, what can we cover, who's putting it on the site, who's editing it. And we just have a big list of articles, when it's edited, when it's published, and who did what. And we just try to keep everything pretty organized and pretty manageable.
Yeah, yeah. And you want to add any kind of input in that as far as like, how you come about those editorial decisions and selecting different writers? How are you selecting? I think one question I'm real curious about, so this just started, you created it, but at some point you're going to move on. You're going to graduate from high school, both of you. And so how do you make sure that this stays in place in perpetuity? How do you set this up to pass it on to future leadership?
Yeah, that's something that we're still working on now. I know it makes me sad to think that I'm going to have to leave, but we definitely have a really open policy. Like, we don't want to, just like we don't want to filter ourselves, we don't want to filter the words of other students. So we don't.
Yeah.
Clearly, if something has inappropriate language or we haven't received any submissions like that yet, but whatever students want to write about and whatever they want to report on in their schools or in the city or in the world, any opinion pieces, anything like that, we definitely will not say publishing someone's work. And similarly, like during the meetings that we have every other week, we brainstorm breakout rooms, like articles that we think would be interesting, and then we open it up to everybody in the group. Who wants to write about this? Who wants to write about this? And it's pretty organic, and it's working so far, I think. But yeah, thinking about what's going to happen when we graduate is definitely something that we have a lot of planning to do.
I'm also real curious too, because these are very difficult and passionate times, and the passion is just as high, particularly for young people, particularly for you all in Generation Z, because there's a lot of things. You're growing up in some very difficult times. I'm saying this as a father of a Gen Zer. Not just the pandemic and having to be in quarantine and lockdown while trying to wrap up your school year too, but then with the politics, we're in a major election year. It's a life and death election year, and then you've got the protest moment that we're into, these issues over systemic racism. What are those conversations like when because you've got to bring in so many different points of view, and also there is this big discussion within media outlets about diversity of opinion, diversity of staff and leadership. Whether or not, for example, black journalists are being appreciated or being valued at different media publications. So do you feel like you have those same discussions? Are those same tensions there within the Bullhorn? Because you've got different types of students from different types of backgrounds. You got black, white, Latino, Asian students who are all working with the Bullhorn for it. And so do those tensions sometimes show themselves like in those discussions about what topics or what issues to focus on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think that I've noticed if there is any tension about those topics. If someone wants to write about their perspective or what they're feeling, that's really highly encouraged, because we recognize that no one's going to do precise to learn necessarily. At least breaking news, national.
Aiden, I think we lost you. I've got a signal. I don't know, Caitlin, you want to jump in on that, because I think we're going to have to go to break after this anyway. Caitlin.
Well, I was going to say that our team is pretty diverse in race and background, and also religion, and we kind of all uplift each other when certain things happen around us, whether it was quarantine, whether it was the protests, whether it was just this whole situation of staying at home. And we usually, we all use the big group chat to talk about certain things, and if we're feeling some type of way, we're not scared to voice our opinion or voice how we're feeling. And we usually, give those mental checkups that, we all need, especially during this whole messed up time right now.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's not. We did get a comment from a listener on our Facebook Live page from Patricia White. Freestyling for these young people, great. I love it. So it's you're getting some kudos and props there for the Bullhorn for the effort. This is great. And definitely I want to invite you both, and I want to invite your contributors when you all are spotlighting different issues, or you have an article. Authors, Bullhorn authors are invited. It's open door policy here at Reality Check. So we'd love to hear kind of like what you all are writing about, and then we can expound on it here on this program. So I don't want this to be the first and the last conversation with the Bullhorn here on Reality Check WURD. So I hope you all will take me up on that offer at least, because I've read some of the content and the opinion in here. Some good stuff. You all have some really good stuff in there. I have some ideas too for some. I have requests for upcoming articles. So I'll definitely, I think, it's an election year. I'll leave this here before I go to break. It's an election year. It's a big election year. Pennsylvania's a battleground. Philly's a battleground. The Philadelphia City Commissioner's Office, check on them. Ask them about their student poll worker program. And I'm encouraging a lot of young people in Philly, call your city commissioner's office about why they are not advertising or promoting their student poll worker program. You can get paid to work at the polls or to become elections judges, high school students. You see it advertised a little bit on the Pennsylvania Secretary of State's page. Don't see anything about it on the Philadelphia City Commissioner's website, even though she did say on the record on this program that they have it in activation. But it's to me that's worth spotlighting, because I think the more young people knew that, hey, I can get paid to help work the elections in a big historic one like this, I think you'd have a lot more interest in civic engagement. So that's my 2 cents. See if y'all can cover that or call her about that or interview her to find out, hey, what's up with that student poll worker program you guys were talking about? But and tell her that I sent you too. So we've been talking with Caitlin Rodriguez and Aiden Gonzalez. Caitlin Rodriguez is with Performing Arts Center for Performing Arts School in Philadelphia, and Aiden Gonzalez with Masterman High School as well. They are part of the lead team for the Bullhorn newspaper. Go to thebullhornnews.com for more there. Some great work, some great writing. So thank you both, and don't be strangers.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Okay, let's take a break. And in the meantime, we'll read the Bullhorn, see what's going on right there, because they did update some recent content. And when we come back, we'll be talking with Alan Detlef and Kristen Weber about child separations. And child separations are not just an immigration issue. Okay, let's start off the bat with that. And Alan Detlef and Kristen Weber will be explaining why child separation is a national issue, and it's much bigger. It's more pervasive than just what's happening at the U.S.-Mexico border. Child separation is happening everywhere, and it's affecting everyone, particularly Black, Brown, and Indigenous populations. We'll explain that and talk a little bit more about that after this break here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you want to start your morning with mindfulness, motivation, and inspiration, tune in to Daybreak with me, Helana, here on WURD Radio, Monday through Friday from 6 to 7 a.m. I'm a health and wellness coach with over 15 years experience helping people to transform their lives. On the show, we talk health and wellness 360, from getting your mind right to getting your money right. So let's rise and shine together right here on WURDradio.com, 96.1 FM, 900 on your AM dial on Daybreak every morning.
Do you need health insurance for your children? The Children's Health Insurance Program, also known as CHIP, provides quality, affordable health insurance for Pennsylvania kids. CHIP ensures that kids can go to the doctor, receive health screenings and vaccines, and get what they need to live a healthy childhood. Families can be covered by CHIP no matter how much money they make. If you've experienced a recent change in employment or income, CHIP may be a good option for your family. Visit ChipCoversPAKids.com to apply or learn more.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Listen live at WordRadio.com.
Seniors, does your doctor regularly reach out to check on you? Can you walk into your doctor's office and see them if you need to? Do you have your doctor's cell phone number, and can you call them anytime, day or night? At Dedicated Senior Medical Center, their only specialty is caring for seniors. Dedicated makes it easy to get the primary care you deserve. Doctors spend more time with patients than the doctors you may be used to. They offer telehealth visits, help you get your medications, and even make sure you get to your appointments. If your doctor isn't treating you like family, it's time to say yes to Dedicated Senior Medical Center. Call Dedicated Senior Medical Center today to schedule a visit and find out what you're missing. Call 267-443-1900. That's 267-443-1900. Appointments are available now.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check on 96. There's just some crazy things from time to time, funny things you see on Twitter. 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word app as well. Word TV, don't forget Word TV. We're at Facebook.com/4Word/videos if you'd like to watch us live, as many of you do around the country, around the world, on Facebook, on our Facebook live stream. Appreciate the comments from folks like Patricia White, who were just giving some high fives and kudos to young people before in this program, actually getting some stuff, doing some things. They just said took matters into their own hand, created their own online publication, newspaper for the city, and it's quite an operation. Actually got quite a few people. There's just two of them. There's a lot of young people that are involved and invested in that operation. So continue to go to the bullhornnews.com for more, and we'll be bringing them back. Joining us now is Alan Detlef and Kristen Weber, and Alan Detlef is a dean and Maconda Brown O'Connor Endowed Dean's Chair at the University of Houston in the Graduate College of Social Work, and Kristen Weber is the Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Justice at the Center for the Study of Social Policy. They're here to talk about the topic or the issue of child separation. Child separation is a big topic, and it's a lot bigger, a lot broader when we need to think about it than how we typically think about it, which is within the prism of immigration or the immigration crisis. Particularly over the years, we've talked about that crisis on the U.S.-Mexico border, but child separation is a daily routine thing, unfortunately, in American life, particularly as it relates to Black, brown, and indigenous people. So they're here to talk about that. How are you both doing?
Doing well. Thanks for the invitation to be here.
All right, excellent. Thanks so much. Kristen, I'll start with you, and then you can talk a bit about this movement that you've all started and kicked off. Child separation, how are we defining that, child separation? Because that typically when we hear that term, we always think about, oh, that's what we see on the news, children being separated from their families on the U.S.-Mexico border, but there's a more broader definition for that.
Right. So the way that we're talking about child separation is that families in need oftentimes encounter the child welfare system, and the child welfare system is supposed to be a helping system. It's supposed to provide the services and supports that children and families need. But what we are seeing, and we've seen for decades, is that the primary intervention or blunt intervention that is available is the forcible separation of children from their families. So you're taking a family that is in need and actually creating more harm by removing children as a way then to treat the family.
Yeah, and excuse me, sorry, I had to clear my throat. Alan, how severe is this? Do we have like a real good grasp, maybe any data that show how severe, how widespread child separation, particularly government-sanctioned institutional separation, is of children and families?
Yeah, it's literally tens of thousands of children that are forcibly removed from their parents every year by the state. And I think it's important that you link this or mentioned the separation that's been happening at the border, because I think we're at a place where people understand the pain and trauma that's associated with parental separation when it's happened at the border, because we've all seen that on TV. We've seen the pain and anguish that children and their mothers experience. But that pain and anguish that happens when children are separated from their parents at the border is the exact same pain and anguish and harm and trauma that's caused when children are forcibly removed from their parents by the state.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that we're not, when we talk about it, we keep it within the prism or frame, right, Kristen, of like, okay, well, this is only happening at the border. We're removing ourselves from like what's happening in other populations. Yeah, what's happening at the border is a real crisis, and it's heartbreaking to watch that. But it's happening to tens of thousands of families every day, tens of thousands of children. But we're not seeing it. It's kind of invisible in a sense. How do we have like a better, much more broader, and much more urgent conversation about child separation in this country?
Right. Well, so that's the origins of our upend movement that we are that we're pushing for. So both Alan and I have, for again decades, been working to reform child welfare systems, and that it has been known for decades that Black and Indigenous Native kids are overrepresented. So Black kids are in foster care at more than 3 times their proportion of the population. And so we've been, there's been a drumbeat about this in child welfare for decades to fix it. But despite actually people of goodwill trying to fix it, foster care is operating just as it's designed. It's in the roots of foster care, these inequities. It's in the roots of racism in this country. And so we're saying we need to reimagine what is child welfare and reimagine what would be interventions that are where families and communities are the first to intervene rather than the state, because the state has at its toolkit, right, the removal and separation. But what can families and communities do, and what would it mean to really invest significantly in families and communities so that this kind of separation doesn't have to happen? Yeah, so up in the movement, how are we activating this? Like where, is it something that's going to, obviously you're setting this out, you're launching this as a nonprofit, as an advocacy think tank. Is this being done in conjunction with government agencies, with social welfare agencies and institutions on the local, state, and maybe even federal level? Sure. So we're just at the very beginning stages of doing this. We're really calling the question, but we recognize that grassroots folks, parents, caregivers have been working for a lot longer than we have, calling to upend the system. But we're using the power, the privilege that we have to really not just shine a light, but join in with folks doing this work and working with a broad swath of people to do that. And Alan also, I think, has more to add. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I think part of it is, as Kristen said, we're joining with a lot of other people that have been calling this, but really trying to raise awareness about the harm that this system causes. You know, when you think about it, this is foster care, and separation from parents is the only intervention that we use with families where we try to help a problem by inflicting more harm and trauma on the people who are in need. And this is about just redirecting resources too. If we can greatly reduce the number of children entering foster care and use that money to support and invest in families and communities, we know that there's research that shows that just a moderate amount of material support, a moderate amount of financial support for families greatly can reduce maltreatment. So we're trying to redirect resources here as well.
You know, the oftentimes the impression of child separation being put into effect, you know, particularly in a local kind of child welfare situation or child welfare function, is that there's something kind of wrong in a particular household, that the parent is not fit to take care of that child. Like, how do we balance that out, or how do we reconcile that? Because there could be cases where it may not be healthy for a particular child to be in the presence of a particular parent, that there could be literally child abuse that's taking place. So maybe in that respect, child separation might be something that's necessary. How do we reconcile that?
Well, I think it's important to start by saying that there are some very severe cases of child abuse and neglect, but those cases are the vast minority of cases that come to the attention of the child welfare system. So it's a very small minority of those cases. But then when we think about those cases where there is severe abuse and neglect in homes, I think the bigger question we need to be asking ourselves is, why does that occur to begin with? and what are the structural issues and the structural inequities in society that create the conditions that lead to that kind of maltreatment. So part of our goal with the Up-In movement is to address those larger systemic issues to begin with. And then when that is the case, how can families and communities come together to support those children and help? As Kristen said before, Up-In is about envisioning a society where families and communities are the first responders to children in need rather than the state.
Oh, go ahead, Kristen. You were about to add something on that.
Oh, my additional add is that what we're seeing in child welfare is that largely children are coming in for reasons of neglect. The separation is around neglect. And then as a society, we're organized to see parents, particularly black parents, as pathological, blaming black parents for larger social ills like lack of housing, lack of livable wages, all of these larger social ills that really need to be addressed. And Up-In is about stopping that, interrupting that narrative, and stopping that that way of intervening with families.
We're talking with Kristen Weber. Kristen Weber is at the Center for the Study of Social Policy. Go to cssp.org. She's the Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Justice there. Also, Alan Detlef is the Dean and McConnor Brown O'Connor Endowed Dean's Chair at the University of Houston Graduate School of Social Work. Go to uh.edu/social work for more on what they do. The Up-In movement can be found at Up-In Movement on social media, hashtag Up-In or hashtag Up-In movement. We're talking about child separation, how destructive and disastrous that is. And, I guess it's kind of difficult right now. You're trying to encourage systems, these large institutions and systems, right? I guess I'll start with you, Alan, on this question, to recalibrate, to fundamentally overhaul and reshape how they're handling child welfare issues and challenges, how to not just go for the immediate sort of knee-jerk response, which is to separate a child from the family, but you're asking that at a time when budgets are very tight, and those social welfare systems are already tremendously strained, and they're being cut as we speak on all government levels. And so how are we going to handle that? How are we going to address that piece?
Well, I think part of what we're talking about is if families and communities really are the first responders, then that addresses some of that issue. But I think it's important, even when there's times when there's budget cuts, it's important for this system and for people outside of the system to recognize the harm that this system is causing to children, and particularly Black and Indigenous children. And related to what we mentioned before, there's also, in addition to there being families in need, there's also a whole body of research that shows that decisions that are made about who to remove are influenced by racial biases within the system. So children are moved because of bias, and that's something that the system needs to address.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Kristen. I'm wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Well, so a couple things on that. One is that we know studies have shown that children who enter foster care and are separated are at risk for a host of negative experiences as adults, including homelessness, criminal justice, lack of education, unemployment, early parenthood, significant mental health disorders. So we're going to pay for this. It's just sort of, where do you want to pay for this, and where do you want to make the investments? And again, this isn't going to happen overnight. Calling for dismantling, abolishing the child welfare system is a process. So we don't imagine this is more turning a large ship than calling for an immediate stop.
Yeah, that's real important. What should policymakers be doing on an issue like this? What sort of role could they be playing? When I mean policymakers, like your members of Congress on the federal level, but then your state legislatures and your city councils, your county executives, or county level officials as well. What sort of role could they be playing? What's the recommendation in terms of a good policy prescription or passable policy prescriptions to address this problem? Go ahead, Alan.
Well, it can start certainly expanding access to safety net programs, because as Kristen mentioned, many of the cases that come to the attention of the child welfare system are due to neglect, and that's often associated with poverty. So expanding access to safety net services. But I think there's also a way that legislative bodies can force the child welfare system to have more oversight and to be accountable for the harm that they cause to children and families.
Yeah, yeah. Kristen, jump in on that. Like, as far as like the
Sure.
role of, I wonder about that.
Well, so we have some ideas, and some of them are actually at cssp.org. I'll encourage folks to go there. But in addition to what Alan was talking about, we know that increasing safe and affordable housing and that availability helps decrease referrals to child welfare. We know about supporting the expansion to support kids staying with kin, whether it is people who you're related to by blood or people who you just call auntie and uncle, but supporting those relationships and the ability to stay there when parents are in need, that helps too. We know a lot about keeping kids out of group home settings and finding other kinds of family-based settings for them, whether it's kin or a foster home, helps prevent kids from going way deep into the system and facilitates them getting back with their families. So there's a lot we already know, but there's also a lot that policymakers need to do and we need to do to really center and put first the voice of listen to the families, the communities who are already doing this thinking, already doing this design work, and they also have solutions and thoughts about this.
We've been talking with Kristen Weber at the Center for the Center for the Study of Social Policy, CSSP. Go to cssp.org for more there. And also, we've been talking with Alan Dettlaff, who is Dean in McConnell Brown O'Connor Endowed Dean's Chair at the University of Houston Graduate College of Social Work. Go to uh.edu/social work for more there. For more about the Upend movement, at Upend Movement on social media, #Upend. Go to cssp.org, get more information on that and how you can get more research and learn more about this. I definitely want to delve into this again at a later point and see kind of what you've all sort of even discovered, maybe new aspects of this issue you've discovered while you've been rolling out the Upend Movement program. So definitely we'll be in touch and seeing ways in which the policymakers too can get more involved. So really appreciate this work and kind of highlighting this issue. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Thank you. Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Weather and traffic to keep you informed for your drive home in the happy hour with Sincerely Sarita. Monday through Thursday, 4 till 7 p.m. Right here on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Tune in Saturdays from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. to hear Empire Capital and Consulting founder Mark Palmer's show titled Black Money, Black Power. This show centers around black money and how black power is derived from money. Tune in every Saturday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Black Money, Black Power. Hosted by Mark Palmer.
Be heard. Want another way to join the conversation? Follow us on social media using the hashtag onWURD. Be heard. Stay connected to Word Radio. Independent Black Media.
Listen to Laborers Live. We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check, 8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. So people were asking questions about fireworks and kind of like what's going on. 2020, this year marks the first year that Philadelphians are legally allowed to set off fireworks during the weeks leading up to Independence Day. So there have been like years of prohibition, and then there was some sort of like direct conflict between Pennsylvania laws and Philadelphia laws with respect to fireworks. But fireworks are now officially allowed in the city. Unless you obtain a permit, you're only supposed to set off certain kinds of the display explosives following specific guidelines. There's been like this big mass reopening or re-liberalization of fireworks regulations around the country, and Pennsylvania, more specifically Philadelphia, is a victim of that. As fireworks sales have gone up, they've skyrocketed nationally of about like 15-20%. A lot of people are using fireworks now, so that's a big thing. But what happened in Philly? So Pennsylvania legalized fireworks sales across the state back in 2017, I believe. And so the statewide law legalizing firecrackers for consumers' use didn't jibe with Philadelphia fireworks rules. So at the time, there was a House bill, it was Pennsylvania House bill, that allowed in-state businesses to sell airborne sparklers to residents, but it didn't change the Philadelphia Fire Code. The Philadelphia Fire Code, in contrast to Pennsylvania law, strictly prohibited people actually using those types of fireworks within city limits unless you have a permit. So both Pennsylvania law and Philadelphia law, like over guns, were in direct conflict. And so everything was confusing, like once we got to Independence Day or 4th of July, well, let's call it 4th of July because there's no independence really, 4th of July 2018. So thank Mayor Jim Kenney for this. He signed an updated fire code last year, July 3rd, 2019, and then that basically reconciled Pennsylvania and Philadelphia Pennsylvania law and Philadelphia Fire Code on fireworks. And so because of Jim Kenney, thank your mayor, now Philadelphians are able to legally set off a number of fireworks, including ground-based fireworks, firecrackers, Roman candles, bottle rockets, other C-class fireworks, like the consumer grade, but not fireworks with more than 50 milligrams of explosive materials, not display fireworks, which contain professional grade pyrotechnics. In a nutshell, Mayor Kenney made it possible for fireworks to be set off in the city of Philadelphia. Now, there are a lot of restrictions, however. You got to be 18 years old. You can't set off fireworks within 150 feet of an occupied structure, and that's houses and commercial buildings. You can't light a fuse under any trees or power lines, which is like common sense. And you must have permission in writing from whoever owns the land. So unless you get the green light from Parks and Rec, that's like most public space. You shouldn't be doing fire, but people are doing it anyway throughout the city. And that's in large part thanks to Mayor Jim Kenney that people reelected. So, you know, when you have once again, when you have as abysmally as like just embarrassingly low turnout in a city like Philadelphia as we typically get, especially during primaries, that's what you get. You know, you get what you don't vote for. And so now people are like upset and vexed about all these fireworks and hearing fireworks go off. And it's like, well, you know, the reelected mayor who's like, well, I don't care. I got reelected. So I got my lame duck term. He's like, okay, why don't we just sign this off? You know, I don't care. It's fireworks. Fireworks, you're going to sign off on fireworks while the city's in the midst of a gun violence crisis. Like, I mean, it's just like, you know, sometimes the logic inside City Hall is whatever logic they're operating on is just amazing. It's just stupefying. Let me go to Tyrone out in North Philly, who's calling in for a reality check. Tyrone? Okay, can you hear us, Tyrone?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Excuse me, y'all. I'm so sorry. I didn't know I was on here. How you doing today, good brother? Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm good, brother. Thank you.
Two things. One, man, I know we're getting close to shutting down the town, but, brother, I really wanted to comment on, you know, your statement last week when the brother called up about the other folks getting the gun, and you were saying how we got so many other things that we have to deal with. I really wanted to give you a little shout out on that because once again, we got so many things coming at us. Just like today, you had the young people talking about their newsletter. You got the young lady talking about adoption, and then, and what's happening with our children in social services. So I really think that we got to understand the dynamics of where we are.
Yeah.
When I called you up, good brother, one of the things I kept saying that this pandemic, I thought was going to be the push to get us to get a chance to, pull a lot of our connections and resources together where we can try to deal with the many things that are coming at us. But, you keep saying it, brother, and I just want to keep shouting you out and thank you for it. And I want to close with this. You were talking about the young people's newsletter, and one of the things that I've been noticing is Scoop has the Kids Scoop, the back page of the Scoop, where they got all kinds of games and puzzles and all kinds of different things that children can use. And I've been trying to say to all the parents, everybody I give the newspaper to, I say, if you got any children, please let them work on Kids School. It is a tremendous educational tool. And I know several of the developments that I'm dropping the news, the scoop off to, are using it in their children's program. So I just want to give Scoop a little shout out for their children's Scoop education. So thank you, man.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
And Charles, I am so glad, good brother. I am so glad that you are who you are, because each and every day that you talk to us, you feed us, brother. And folks got to understand and listen to the message and act accordingly. Because I'm telling everyone, this is our great opportunity.
It really is.
Really make a difference.
It really
all
is.
The things that we are confronted with. So thank you, brother, for allowing me to share. And please, brother, keep it coming.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Tyrone. I'll try my best. Then we go to Lola out of Jenkintown, who's calling in for a reality check. Ms. Lola?
Yes. Hey, Charles. Thank you again for another great show. Like, my soul is fed, like, this time that I've been on this pandemic through Word. So thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to say, like, about the foster care system. Thank you for doing that, because, like, every day African Americans are dealing with being separated from their children, and that was great that you did that show, because if you can recall, the man that was caught on videotape taking down the signs saying that F Black Lives, Black people don't matter to me. Do you remember that? And he was, it was in South Philly, and he was taking down the signs off the. Okay, he was.
Yeah, he worked for the family court. Yeah.
Exactly, for 30 years, right? So think about that. This person and the type of people who are in the system are the ones making the decisions that deal with our young Black boys and girls' lives, and not just him. And you know what, Charles? This systematic racism just goes throughout everything that affects our lives. Health, jobs, just everything. The foster care system, the family system, anything that African Americans or Black people come in contact with. There is someone who is in this system who is racist and has the ability to make decisions that transform our lives.
And you know what? And to that point, Lola, and it's not just like white folk either who, like, you randomly find out about, like, is it ripping Black Lives Matter signs down. It's like some of our folk too who work in these systems, whether in a staff position or sometimes as a judge, and have internalized the racism. I'm gonna call them out. And it's pervasive. It just lacks all sorts of humanity and compassion for one another. Bad enough, you're right. We have to deal with, like, front-facing, white people who are, racist and like don't care about the fate of black children or black families. And that's not just in terms of criminal courts, but in terms of civil courts, in terms of how matters like of divorce or child custody are handled. And it's pervasive, and it's got to stop. And black folks who work in those positions, you have an obligation in a position like that, working in institutions like that. I don't care if you're just a receptionist or you're front, have some compassion for your, I mean, first of all, I mean, I understand those are very taxing, stressful jobs, but and understand that there's a bigger, there's a bigger, broader systemic thing happening here where like our families, the very core and fabric of our communities are getting ripped apart like violently on a daily basis. And it's like people need to start understanding that. I'm sorry, go ahead and
Charles,
wrap up, Lola.
Okay, yeah, I'll wrap up. And then, Charles, that also it affects the housing, because when you take children away from their parents and you separate them, a lot of the times the housing and all of that is tied into it. If you're in public housing, if you don't have children or something, you're put out. Or if you're, whatever's going on with the criminal system and all of that, they put you out. You're homeless. And a lot of the kids that are out downtown that I see when I go into work, half of those kids have been pushed out of the foster care system. So there's a lot of work we have to do. But thank you so much for a great show.
It really is. Thank you, Lola. I appreciate that. I'm going to have to give you the last word, Lola, because we have to unfortunately go to break. I'll catch everyone else tomorrow. Well, no, Monday. It's a Monday because we're off on Fridays. But I'll catch you on Monday here on Reality Check. That wraps this Reality Check week. I want to thank Troy Wilmore as well for his patience in getting those radio trains running on time and keeping me in check. And also all our guests, all our subject matter experts, our residents, our listeners calling in here to Reality Check WURD. Continue to go to @Ellison Report, #Reality Check. The B-Note, the BENote.com, that's our companion magazine for Reality Check WURD. And also check out the latest Reality Check column in the Philadelphia Citizen.org, Cracking the Youth Voter Code. So we talk about young people and civic engagement. All right, we're headed into The Source with Andrea Lawful Sanders. That's up next here on WURD. So keep your WURD radio dial locked in, because that's coming up next, The Source. And Philly, in the meantime, Philly and beyond, please stay sharp, stay smart. But more importantly, please, especially in Philly, y'all really need to stay safe out there. People, stay indoors during July 4th. All right, just like don't go out venturing out. But in the meantime, just relax, and please be safe out there. We'll talk to you next week. Take care.